Kelly, Donald Trump would often speak admiringly of Adolf Hitler and often praise Nazi military leaders, specifically, quote, "I need the kind of generals that Hitler had." We'll open phone and text lines to talk about the former president's very real, very scary fixation on Hitler and other fascist dictators, not to mention his alleged racist comments about a military member who was murdered. This all in a dead heat race where nothing seems to move the needle. Will this?
I'm Marjorie Egan, then it's of Arts and Culture with GBH's Jared Bowen. Curators at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum have just debuted a new, totally fresh exhibit of work by the Impressionist Edouard Manet that paints its own picture of the French master's spotty family life. All that ahead, Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The U.S. says there's evidence North Korea has sent some of its troops to Russia. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says the U.S. is still gathering information.
What exactly they're doing, left to be seen. These are things that we need to sort out.
Ukraine and South Korea say thousands of North Korean troops have been moved to Russia, and the two countries say the North Korean troops will be deployed against Ukrainian troops in the battlefield. The Israeli military says it has killed a presumed successor to the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah. Hezbollah has confirmed the report. Nasrallah was killed earlier this month by an Israeli airstrike. The news comes as Secretary of State Antony Blinken visits Saudi Arabia. He's continuing the Biden administration push for a ceasefire in Lebanon and in Gaza, although no movement on ceasefire talks has been seen. The election is fewer than 2 weeks away. The presidential candidates are stumping in swing states today. Former President Donald Trump is going to meet with faith leaders in Georgia and then hold a rally in the state later. Vice President Harris will participate in a town hall with undecided voters in Pennsylvania, hosted by CNN. Britain's deputy prime minister has denied accusations by Donald Trump's campaign that her party broke the law by supporting Vice President Harris in the U.S. election. As Robbie Griffiths reports, the Trump campaign accuses the ruling Labour Party of foreign interference.
Speaking in the British Parliament, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner played down accusations by Trump's campaign, saying Labour volunteers followed the rules by using their spare time to help his presidential rival, Vice President Kamala Harris.
It happens in all political parties. People go on campaign and they do what they want to do in their own time with their own money.
Rayner was reacting to news that a lawyer from Trump's team had filed a complaint to the Federal Election Commission, alleging that Labour was financially supporting campaigners who have travelled to the US to support Harris. Earlier, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer also talked down the row, claiming he has what he called a good relationship with Trump. For NPR News, I'm Robbie Griffiths in London.
People in the U.S. are stressed out about the general election. NPR's Katia Riddle tells us that's according to a new report from the American Psychological Association.
The report shows that 7 out of 10 adults say the future of the nation is a significant source of stress in their lives. Specifically, they are fearful about political violence after the election. Lynn Bufka is with the American Psychological Association.
And it cuts across respondents in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of political party affiliation. So it's something, unfortunately, that in some ways is uniting us.
Conversely, 3 out of 5 people say they are hopeful about the election outcome. Bufka says the findings show that 2 seemingly contradictory things can be true at once. Katia Riddle, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow is down nearly 300 points. It's NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. After conducting scans and quality checks, officials at Vineyard Wind say they're removing an unspecified number of blades from existing turbines. The move comes in response to a mid-July blade break that left debris scattered in the ocean and on several beaches. The announcement from Vineyard Wind and GE Vernova, the company that makes those blades, came early today and that they're doing it out of an abundance of caution. The project has not been generating power for more than 3 months after that July 13th incident. Local teens are gearing up for a debate tonight over ballot question 2, which would eliminate the MCAS high school graduation requirement. Teens in Print with the nonprofit Right Boston is hosting the debate at Roxbury Community College as part of its mission to elevate youth voices and help young people develop writing and journalism skills. Isaiah Rousseau, a student reporter with Teens in Print, says the debate helps encourage civic engagement among young people.
it would like open an opportunity for other youth to realize that they have a voice in the community and can like help contribute to any change that they can make.
The debate will be followed by a community roundtable that'll give local the stakeholders an opportunity to engage with young people on the issue. It'll be held from 4 to 6 this afternoon. In sports, Celtics and Bruins both off until tomorrow. The Patriots are getting ready to host the Jets at Gillette on Sunday. Sun, clouds, mid-70s today. We are already at 69 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Nature Conservancy, working across oceans and isles to cut carbon emissions, protect lands and waters, and support local communities for a future where people and nature thrive. nature.org/solutions.
Eastern Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you very much, Joe. Good morning, Jim.
Thank you very much.
I'm thanking for the people that gave a few applause.
By the way, we could break a record today, by the way. I just did some math.
Yeah.
If Jamie, Nicole, and Zoe joined us on the set, there'd be more people in the set than there are in the audience. We thank you all for coming. You don't need tickets. You don't need an RSVP, by the way.
That's
and
right.
we really thank those of you who
We
chose
do,
the
we
king.
do.
Even though this is really embarrassing. In any case, Trump's love for dictators and fascism is becoming tough to ignore, even by the right-wing media machine. In 2020, he started grooming his MAGA base for made-up voter fraud well before the results were in. We've heard what he said about Kim Jong-un. Putin is fawning over strongmen like Hungary's Viktor Orban. He said he'd be a dictator on day one of his second term. Now his own former chief of staff, General John Kelly, is speaking out in the Atlantic and the New York Times about an exchange with Trump where he asked why America's generals, as Trump, couldn't be more like Nazi war commanders, and again, praising Hitler. I repeat, praising Hitler. And by the way, General Kelly's not the only one. We remember that the highest-ranking military member, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, a couple of weeks ago said Trump is fascist to the core. This in the context of Trump's rhetoric around immigrants and people of color, also in the Atlantic, reporting that Trump initially offered to help a military family bury a murdered soldier, only to later complain, this is what the Atlantic is reporting, that it, quote, doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican. Let me repeat, doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican. So with less than 2 weeks to go, early voting has already started in many states, including ours. Trump's message seems to be, next president of America should bring the military up to snuff with Hitler's generals, not to mention his racist comments about Latinos. Somehow the race is tied. The number is 877-301-8970. Why does this not matter? And by the way, what's your reaction? These both came out yesterday late in the day.
Right.
And I have to say, it's hard to be stunned by anything that is said about Donald Trump. But this is rather stunning. 877-301-8970. What was your reaction?
Well, I mean, a lot of people criticized John Kelly for the treatment of families at the border during the Trump administration.
I agree with that.
But he's a four-star general. He lost his son. A Marine was killed in Afghanistan. I think he's a man of great honor, and I believe him. And I think I learned this morning that Donald Trump got 5 deferments for his bone spurs. Apparently, Kelly had bone spurs, and he went to fight anyway in Vietnam, and I believe him. I believe he was.
Isn't he also the source of Trump saying about people? Was it killed in battle, losers and suckers?
He talked about being in Normandy with Trump. He talked about his repeatedly calling John McCain a loser because he was caught. John McCain was in a cage in North Vietnam for 5 years during the Vietnam War.
Trump said that publicly.
And when McCain could have come home early.
I remember.
McCain wouldn't come home early because the men in his unit were not going to come home with him. So he stayed longer than he should have. He cost George H.W. Bush, who was very young when he flew multiple combat missions in World War II. He called, him. The idea was what do these guys get out of it? They're suckers and losers. People are, on Fox News and they're on Newsmax denying these things. But I mean,
well, let's stop there. The denying these things. I don't want to get into the same rabbit hole that you and I always get into, is that people watch Fox News. Fox News and some of the other right-wing wing outlets are covering the fascism comments, and of course they're quoting Trump sycophants saying it's untrue. So here, I guess, is my question to you. General Kelly is lying when he said he fits the definition. Well, let's play this, actually. Here is General Kelly talking to Michael Schmidt from the New York Times about whether his former boss, that'd be Donald Trump, is indeed a fascist. Here it is.
The former president is in the far right area. He's certainly an authoritarian, admires people who are dictators. He has said that. So he certainly falls into the general definition of fascist.
Okay, so obviously General Kelly is lying when he says that. So when you talk to one of those MAGA people, Kelly's lying, but obviously General Milley is lying too when he said it's fascist to the core. This is like a cabal of decorated generals lying about Donald Trump to what advantage? What do they say?
Well, I mean, I think what's happened here over and over again is the Republican Party stands behind him. I was just looking this morning about Republicans speaking out about this. Lindsey Graham did say he didn't know why he could say such a thing, and another senator, I think from South Dakota. But for the most part, Chuck Grassley, Capito from West Virginia, Dan Sullivan from Alaska, they say what they always say. Oh, I haven't seen the quote. Oh, I don't know anything about that. Oh, I can't comment on something I don't know about. So it's the Republican Party gathering around him, and since he's talking about Hitler today, we talked to Adam Gopnik earlier this year about a book that was talking about the rise of the Third Reich, and one of the things he said is that people thought Hitler was a joke, that they could manipulate him, that he wasn't going to do what he said he was going to do. I mean, I am not saying that Donald Trump is going to put anybody in concentration camps, although he has talked about
kids in cages.
Well, he has talked about putting migrants in concentration camps, essentially. But the comparisons for the way the politicians gather around Hitler before the worst of the atrocities of World War II is similar to the way the Republicans are supporting him now. We can all remember that J.D. Vance called Trump Hitler back before he had a conversion and decided to run as his vice president. So it's the party allowing him to get away with this stuff and not calling him out on it.
Okay, so here is, before we get to your calls, a little more sound. This is John Kelly, General John Kelly, former chief of staff to the President Trump. His own words, speaking to New York Times reporter Michael S. Schmidt. This is about Trump's comments on Hitler.
He commented more than once that, that Hitler did some good things too. And of course, if you know history, again, I think he's lacking in that. But if you know what Hitler was all about, it'd be pretty hard to make an argument that he did anything good.
877-301-8970. And by the way, you are welcome to call if you're a Trump supporter and say this is not true, but you can't just say it's not true. You got to come in with an argument explaining why not just General Kelly is apparently lying, according to Trump supporters, but General Milley is lying too about Trump and their characterization of
listen to these texts. This story has been debunked, you complete fools. You are fake news peddlers. We get this kind of stuff all the time. So they think John Kelly is just making things up and he's full of baloney.
What's
and
the
Milley
name of that person?
They don't have their name.
Could you
signed,
do us a personal favor and tell us what frauds we are on the phone? I'm serious, by the way, at 877-301-8970. If you identify yourself as the person who called us, whatever he said, frauds, or she said, our call screener will put you on next, so you won't even have to wait. Fair enough?
Yeah, I guess you have to ask these people. We all know at this point that Trump is a pathological liar and that the people around him lie for him. So why would you think two men who dedicated their lives to serving the United States, who put their lives on the line, willing to die for their country, why are they the ones that you disbelieve? And why do you believe a guy that if he's opening his mouth, he's lying at this stage of the game? I don't know how you can. I mean, you might say I'm voting for him for the economy, but you got to acknowledge the guy is a constant liar.
Well, can I say one more thing here? Not just about the Hitler comments and the fascism comments. This whole thing about doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican after he promised, by the way, to that family in the Oval Office that he would pay the funeral expenses. I should have said this before. For people to say that's made up too because Mark Meadows, spokesperson, denies this, go down the list of comments he's made about Latinos. And by the way, at 12:30, we're going to have Mike Madrid, who's written a terrific book, The Latino Century, How America's Largest Minority is Transforming Democracy. We'll talk to Mike about this, too. 877-301-8970. Where do you want to start, Marjorie?
Let's go to Parker in Hopkinton. Thank you for calling.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I just, not discounting anything that you're saying, just on the front end. I'm a Democrat, I'm voting for Kamala, but I want to couch a lot of the observations that you're making on one brief story, which is Trump used the investigatory power of the IRS to go after James Comey. Not sure if you're aware of this, but they did this very painful audit that they forced him to go through. And it was clearly retaliation for, Comey not going after Trump's perceived political enemies. And the end of it was James Comey ended up actually getting more money back from the government.
He got more of a refund.
And I share that story with you.
That was a great
he got more
story.
refund, right.
By the way, it wasn't just Comey, it was Andrew McCabe, who's on CNN a lot, too.
He
was also audited by the IRS. But go ahead, Parker.
Yeah, so, what I say is this, will Trump be unhinged? Of course. But these guys are so incompetent that even when they're using the powers of the federal government to try and go after people, they end up getting them a bigger tax return. So understand the fears that you're talking about, but realize these guys are that incompetent.
Well, Parker, that was an excellent call, but I have to say I could not disagree with you more. No guardrails in the second term. He will not pick people who have a record of being fair and being people of service. He'll pick MAGA sycophants who don't care about the law. And I'm sure you've read the stories, because you're obviously a pretty smart caller, about how there are many people who believe that he doesn't care what Supreme Court rules in the second term either. Just like, was it Governor Abbott, after the decision of the Supreme Court talked about that razor wire in the Rio Grande, and there was a suggestion, you don't have to obey the Supreme Court. Why do you think if the Supreme Court attempts to rein in a second term of Donald Trump, that he's not just going to do whatever the hell he wants to do anyway? Parker?
Do you want me to answer that?
Oh, of course I do. Please answer, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so totally up to speed on what you're talking about as well. I think that the answer is simple, is that we don't want to rely on the court. We're relying on institutions. And let's say Trump tries to, on day one, use and weaponize the Justice Department, right, which a lot of people are talking about he's going to do.
Yeah.
What we're going to see is a congressional quagmire that's going to play out first, because he's effectively going to try to go in and shut down all the investigations that are going against him, right, that are currently happening. And the way he's going to do that is he's going to try to put a unconfirmed attorney general and to squash those investigations.
Respectfully, Parker, he or she won't be unconfirmed. The likelihood is good there's going to be a Republican-controlled Senate. He or she will be confirmed. And when the House, which is likely to be Democratic, subpoenas people, they're just going to ignore the subpoenas, like the chair of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan from Ohio, does. So I respect your phone call, and you obviously know a lot. But I think there's much more to fear than you do. But Parker, thank you.
I also want to say that James Comey had the financial wherewithal to, have his accountants and have his lawyers and go out and have people help him. So he ended up in this good position. The average person could be crushed and ruined by something like this.
Well, let me give you an example. We're going to talk during our Twitter thing, our texting thing later in the day.
About Giuliani?
Yeah. So one can say, I wouldn't say Parker would, I don't want to speak for him. Some would say, well, Ruby and the two poll workers from Georgia ended up getting a $150 million judgment against Giuliani. They're going to get all his possessions. Do you think if you asked those two women if they prefer to have gone through what they went through for the last 4 years and get $150 million at the end, or they prefer to never have gotten death threats and been trashed by name by the president and his lawyer? I'd say they'd choose normal life, not a $150 million jury verdict. Again, Comey got a larger return, which I was not aware of.
150 million is a lot of money.
No, but I know that's funny. But when you hear their sound, we're going to play it for you again about the pain these women have suffered in their lives. Very few people, Comey may be an exception, escaped the wrath of Donald Trump. Ann in Lincoln, hi. Ann.
Yes, hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I am so glad we're finally openly talking about fascist word. I'm a boomer, and my dad, after Pearl Harbor, enlisted in the Army, and he fought for 2 years over in Europe, 1 year in Italy, and then D-Day happened, and he moved into France and Germany and all that. I mean, he was really a hero. And that whole generation, I can't understand how anybody in this country who had family that went through that could possibly embrace today's Republican Party and not see Trump for what he is. And it is just unbelievable to me that anybody who has a dad, grandfather, uncle who went through that World War II experience would vote for this man.
Well, you don't even need the long litany. I naively thought, and I naively underlined, that his comments about John McCain were the end. His comments about Khizr Khan and his son, Khizr Khan being the person who lost his son in war and spoke at the Democratic Convention. But, Ann, we've sadly been wrong repeatedly. Let's see if this time is any different. Ann, thanks for the call.
I just gave Senator Lindsey Graham credit where I shouldn't have, because this was an incorrect story on my part. As far as we know, we don't know that he's said anything yet about this latest disgrace.
I mean the Hitler stuff.
Yes. This is a previous Hitler remark that he was commenting on, not the most recent Hitler remark that he was commenting on.
877-301-8970 is our number. This is just 1 day's reporting.
Well, I guess the question is, as I said, we're getting, and people know what they're getting when they text here. We're not Trump fans. That we're getting a lot of, this isn't true, this is made up. Why is the Atlantic doing this 2 weeks before the election? So if these people are texting us, you wonder if this is going to matter at all. We debated this before the show. You think it can with certain people that are on the fence.
Well, this is a dead heat race. So if let's assume, I don't know how many, let's pick a number. If 70 million people are currently contemplating voting for Donald Trump in a dead heat race, including dead heats in 7 swing states, if a grand total of, 500,000 of them, which is fewer than 1%, decides they can't tolerate this kind of thing, it could turn an election. I'm not suggesting there's going to be like that Titanic, not Titanic, a major ship, it's a little late for the Titanic, to turn around. I'm just saying on the margins, this may have an impact. And by the way, forget the story, which you should not, but put in the back burner the story about doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican. They're good reporting by the guy who runs The Atlantic, one of the finest publications, in my opinion, in America. I think Marjorie's too. The other side says no. Take the comments about fascism and Hitler. The top 2 generals, Kelly wasn't a general for Trump, but he was a general who was the chief of staff. You have to be willing to say, which I assume the texters are, that both General Kelly and General Milley, who served their country for their whole lifetime, are lying about that. You cannot rebut this without making that assertion. And these 2 generals are lying about Donald Trump, even though there is no history of either of them lying about anything.
Did you play the American Values clip?
Let's do that. It's great. And then let's take a break, and then we'll come back.
This is John Kelly again, who was recorded, obviously, by the New York Times when they did this story, and he's describing Trump's lack of American values.
He's certainly the only president that has all but rejected what America is all about and what makes America America in terms of our Constitution, in terms of our values, the way we look at everything, to include family and government. And he's certainly the only president that I know of that was certainly in my lifetime that was like that.
Our number is 877-301-8970.
We're talking about the latest horrible remarks by Donald Trump revealed by one of his former generals and a family who lost a young woman in Mexico, and the word about her burial. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming at youtube.com. GBH News. Will this make any difference?
Japan saw a record low number of births last year. Some see a sluggish economy and the expense of raising kids as part of the reason why. If I think about the economic situation, I couldn't make a child happy, this woman says. Japan's government passes a slew of new policies to reverse the trend. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Johnson & Wales University, committed to going beyond the classroom by helping students develop networks, obtain real-world experience, and providing hands-on learning that makes an impact. More at jwu.edu. And Boston Ballet. The season opens on October 24th with Fall Experience, a dynamic program featuring the Boston premiere of the season's Canon from Crystal Pite, one of today's most in-demand choreographers. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Our text prompt of the day at 877-301-8970 is about the downfall of Rudy Giuliani, one-time personal attorney for Trump, has 7 days to turn over his Manhattan apartment, a vintage Mercedes-Benz, watches, essentially all his possessions, in order to satisfy the judgment that the election workers in Georgia won from him. Does this decision or this ruling that he's got to surrender all his property, essentially everything he's got, does this bring you hope there will finally be some accountability for those who tried to overthrow the government of the U.S., or is this a one-off? The number is 877-301-8970. We are talking about two things. We're, one, talking about the comments of General Kelly on tape to the New York Times and what Trump thought about Hitler and what Kelly and General Milley think about Donald Trump vis-a-vis fascism. And The Atlantic is reporting that after promising to pay the funeral expenses of Vanessa Guillen, who was murdered, a military member, and he did not, that's beyond dispute, by the way, no one is saying that he did, that he said it doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican. In fairness, we should say, her sister, Vanessa Guillen's sister, is quoted in the Atlantic story by the writer. I don't appreciate how you're exploiting my sister's death for politics. Her name is Mayra, by the way, M-A-Y-R-A, Guillen. Hurtful and disrespectful to the important changes she made for service members. Donald Trump did nothing but show respect to my family and Vanessa. In fact, I voted for President Trump today. That may be true, by the way. As far as I know, she was not in the room when he is alleged to have said that it doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican. And let me just be 100% clear. There is no dispute, none, that he did not pay a penny of the $60,000. It was picked up by the government and by some fundraising. 877.
Donations.
What's that?
Donations.
Yeah.
Here's from Jim from Manchester by the Sea. I'm a former military officer with the Naval Academy in the post-Vietnam period. I cannot believe how Trump received support from military veterans after disrespecting John McCain and other military heroes. Also, when I attended the Naval Academy, I too was diagnosed with bone spurs, but nobody said that would allow me to avoid my obligatory service. Seems a lot of people with bone spurs. Trump,
I didn't know
Kelly,
about Kelly until
Jim
you said it this morning.
I didn't
That's
know
amazing.
it either. I did not know he's a Gold Star father.
He is.
As
John,
we said before.
John in Westford, welcome to the show. Good to talk to you again, John. Hi.
Hi. I think a lot of reason why Trump supporters they just don't believe it anymore. We've heard over the years so many things that have turned out to be false, that our algorithm is completely different than yours, our social feed. Like a typical example, 52 CIA officials or high-ranking intelligence officers. Geez, I hear my echo.
No, you're fine on our end, John. Keep going.
Okay, so you have all these CIA saying that the laptop was Russian disinformation, or just the whole Russian hoax, which turned out to be Fusion GPS, the Steele dossier. It's kind of like we're numb to it, and we just don't believe
We got it. No, we understand
Like
that.
the whole Charlottesville, for example, that came up during the debate, and there was no fact checking on the moral equivalency things.
What do you mean?
The
John?
comment he made after saying they're fine people on both sides. John's right about that. But John, so you're saying because of a couple of examples of allegations against Trump being proven to be inaccurate, you disbelieve what General Milley and what General Kelly had to say?
But they're not little examples. The whole
No. Okay. Despite the big examples, I'll use your word. You didn't use it, but despite the huge examples of inaccuracies, do you not believe General Kelly and General Milley?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And
based on what? Based on what? This is not reporting. These are their own words. It's not inaccurate reporting. This is what they said.
Right, but also there were 12 other people with him when he said the World War I veterans were suckers. And they all said, nope, that never happened. And they were all present when he was there.
You know what, John? You know what this reminds me of? When Harvey Weinstein or Roger Ailes first got in trouble for sexually harassing and raping women, you had all these women come forward at Fox or in the Hollywood business say, he never raped me. And well, he didn't rape everybody, and everybody didn't hear it. But in the stuff that wasn't true, you can call it the Russian hoax, but there's no doubt that Russia was interfering with our election then, and that Russia was interfering now. And the Mueller report was spun around by the Attorney General
Barr.
But there was collusion. 12 talks about 12
findings.
Whole findings of collusion in that report. Plus, you had all the people that were closest to him, people that Trump hired to tell you about the terrible things he did the day he tried to overthrow the government. And the thing about Ukraine, I mean, you can say it was that something was wrong about that this wasn't true or that wasn't true. The Steele dossier, you're absolutely right. But the big stuff, 80% of it is absolutely true.
John, having said that, we really appreciate you calling, and we hope you will continue to call. We'll disagree, but we're really glad you voiced your point of view. Do it again.
But the thing is, you do hear this over and over again. 70% of Republicans think that the election was stolen.
They do.
And you have all these people that think that the day, what we all saw on television on January 6th was a day, as the president has called it, a day of love and beauty, or whatever the hell he called it.
Last week he did.
So, I mean, the big things, my point is, have been true. Anyway, Jillian in Belmont, thank you.
Hey, Jillian.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
I'm calling to ask the panel for some help with my phone banking. So when I hear about Trump as a fascist, I break into a cold sweat. But there are people I speak to who say, yeah, I don't like him, but I like his economic policies, or we need to tighten up the border. And I'm having trouble explaining to them why their lives will be worse under a fascist dictatorship. And it's so obvious to me, I can't even put into words.
Well, I don't think they're probably not saying to you that it won't, but as long as their pocketbook is better, that's fine. Van Jones, who was an advisor to Obama, responded to that question, essentially, Jillian, last night. He said, what's the worst thing that could happen if you're not a fan of Kamala Harris and she's elected? Your taxes are going to go up. Maybe she's misrepresenting whose taxes were going to go up. If it turns out you're wrong and you vote for Trump, you could end up with the end of democracy. And I don't think you can disabuse people of a belief, whether the facts are there or not, that they'll do better economically. And would you rather do better economically if they're right under a dictator, or maybe not do quite as well under somebody that actually honors the Constitution and democracy? That would persuade me, but I know it's not an easy task. Jillian, thanks for the call.
See the story about RFK today in the front page of the Globe? How he's going to join the Trump administration and make America healthy again. He's going to make sure our food is all pure and the water is pure and the air is pure. I'm thinking, what is he talking about? This is a climate change denier who wants to weaken the EPA. The Supreme Court has already weakened the EPA.
And by the way, most of RFK Jr.'s career, if you don't know, was as an environmental lawyer, which is how I interviewed him years and years ago.
And he was a really good environmental lawyer. So it's kind of like we're in Alice in Wonderland down the rabbit hole here. You just don't get. I just don't get where people are at.
We have time for one more, and
Brunier
that's
in
it.
Hyde Park.
Hi, Brunier. How are you?
I am troubled. Thank you very much.
Good to talk to you, though.
Listen, I listen every day, but I cannot call from my house. That's the problem.
Why?
I have no idea.
Well, maybe you got to move, Brunier.
I think I'm thinking of that because it makes no sense. I'm calling you right now from my car. That's the only way I can get through.
Okay, so what's going on?
Well, first of all, I mean, listen, I listen every day. You can imagine I'm like bombarded with things I want to say, but I'm going to be quick. With respect to Chief of Staff Kelly, I mean, Kelsey, please. I mean, everybody knows that Trump is going to say something stupid like that, you know, lauding Hitler and everything else. So there's nothing surprising about it. But one of the things that I want to talk about primarily is with respect to the black men thing, saying they're not supporting Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to get off the back of black men because black men, about like, 80% plus black men are supporting Kamala Harris, according to historically they have. The people they need to talk to are white women and white men who know, according to everything that's happening right now, that we are facing the loss of our democracy, and yet they're pointing the finger at black men who, by sheer percentage, would support democracy more so than they. And I think that
Bernier,
they need to look at their perspective.
You say you listen every day, and I'm sure you do. You may have missed yesterday when we were quoting Stacey Abrams, former head of the, I don't know if she's the minority leader or the Speaker of the House in Georgia, and obviously ran for governor and lost in the last election cycle. She said exactly what you said on CNN the other night. Black men, even at a lower rate than they voted for Biden, are the second most loyal cohort of voters to Kamala Harris, only after black women. So I take a lesson from both you. We're going to discuss it with Michael Curry in a little bit too, but I take in very serious ways what you had to say and what Abrams had to say, and we hope we hear from you more, Bernier. We miss you. Call us whenever you can.
Okay, I'm sorry about his cell phone service there. Anyway, coming up next, we're going to be talking to Jared Broen, GBH's executive arts editor here. He's going to tell us about his star turn on stage.
Covering election 2024.
Supporters and opponents of the state's 5 ballot questions are out in full force.
The 5 questions cover standardized testing as a high school graduation requirement, increasing the minimum wage for tip workers, auditing the state legislature, unionizing rideshare drivers, and regulating access to certain psychedelic substances.
It is very straightforward. In each case, yes means let's make a change, and no means let's keep things the way they are.
GBH 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Comcast, offering Xfinity Internet, designed to provide a connection for home networks so everyone can be online at once, even during peak hours. More information at xfinity.com. And the Bach Center, presenting the Politics War Room podcast, live with political strategist James Carville, journalist Al Hunt, and guest Doris Kearns Goodwin, November 2nd at the Schubert Theater. More at bachcenter.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Reminder about our text prompt of the day. Remember the number is 877-301-8970. You text in. Marjorie reads some of those texts right before the 1 o'clock news. Rudy Giuliani, the one-time Four Seasons landscaping personal attorney to Trump, has been ordered by a Trump-nominated judge to surrender virtually all his possessions to satisfy a judgment, $150 million judgment, brought against him by 2 election workers whom you've learned to know from Georgia. We want to know if this means there'll finally be some accountability for those who tried to overthrow the government, or is this just a one-and-done kind of thing at 877-301-8970. Text us. We're joined now by GBH's executive arts editor and host of The Culture Show, which airs every day right here at 2 o'clock on 89.7 GBH. Jared, it's good to see you.
Great to see you both.
Hi there.
Jared, last time we spoke to you, you spoke of a life-changing experience on the stage at the Huntington Theater. So elaborate. Tell us what you did and why it was so neat.
Well, it was very impactful. So we talked about this show, Nassim, which is still on stage at the Huntington, and the deal is that there is this play happening, and each performer every night doesn't know what they're about to do. By contract, I was sent a contract in advance saying you cannot learn anything about this, talk to anyone about this, again, know anything. So I literally walked on stage having no idea what was about to happen. And as I think about it now, 75 minutes later, how the fact that an entire show unfolded is extraordinary, because it's all the construct of this playwright, Nassim Soleimanpour, an Iranian playwright who now lives in Berlin. And I'm still somewhat speechless talking about it, because I was invited on stage, I was introduced, and then I was told to go start the first page of the script, which was in a box on stage.
Which you hadn't seen before.
Which I had not seen. I mean, my worst fear about this whole experience was that I was going to be out on stage alone. My hope for this was that I would walk out and be a bit part of a larger group. Well, that was not to happen. For the most part, I was on stage. For at least 2/3 of it, half of it, I was on stage alone. And so I went to this box, I began reading the first page of the script, and then really 75 minutes later, it was over. And I had Nassim Soleimanpour on the show recently, and he has a mechanical engineering background, which now makes sense because of the way he constructs this, so that this evening can unfold with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. I'm not an actor, I've never been an actor, I am only a journalist, but it worked because I dove into this, I guess like I would a story or something, that I just locked in on it.
Explain, though, this life-changing thing. That's why we brought it up. I mean, give us an example of something that had a huge impact on you.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it was life-changing, but I would say hugely impactful. And what happened is the fact that you walk out there and you find yourself in the middle of this conversation. And again, the great joy is that you don't know what's happening to you necessarily until you're in it. And the other great joy is the fact that the audience is part of this, because the audience knows that each night's performer doesn't know what they're doing. And so they're essentially rooting for you. In fact, I found myself edging closer to the edge of the stage because I felt like I needed to be closer to the audience, because we were all one in this together. But the construct of the play is really about an exchange of lives and culture and friendship. He's an Iranian playwright who for years couldn't see his work produced. He literally couldn't see it produced because he was a conscientious objector, so he wasn't allowed to travel. So to get his work out into the open, he would send his works to different theater companies around the world with this same construct, that somebody would perform it and they would always leave an empty seat for him. He can now travel, so that's changed, and I think enough people know this now that he is actually part of the play, and I didn't know that.
So, Marjorie, I asked you this the other day. You've had time to think about it. I'll ask you a second time. If you were invited to do this and do a star turn at the Huntington with Nassim, what are the odds that you'd say yes?
Well, you know, if he said I just had to show up, didn't have to do anything in advance, I might do it. It might be.
You would?
Yeah, it would. I think it would be. And one of the things I think that's a neat thing, when you are on stage, the lights are so bright in your face, you can't really see people, which I find rather soothing.
This was not that case. I could see the audience members, but again, it worked. And
like at the BSO, when you do read the night before Christmas.
Exactly, which is terrifying. And I will tell you, my knees were shaking when I was on stage at the beginning. I was trembling. And I think what is so beautiful, too, is that immediately you get dropped into this, and the playwright, Nassim, is trying to draw out part of your life, who you are, which I don't necessarily enjoy sharing with a lot of people.
Exactly.
But I did in the moment, which I think makes it raw, and you're kind of exposed, which is interesting. And he's sharing the same. There's an exchange about language and what's meaningful to you, who in your family is meaningful to you. He's teaching Farsi while he's doing this. So there are still moments that pop up in my head, and this was almost 2 weeks ago now, where I think, I cannot believe that happened, or now I'm just remembering this, or I'll bump into someone who was there that night and share something. It was pretty.
It's only there 5 more days at the Huntington, the Great Huntington Theater. Keith Lockhart did it. Anthony Shalhoub did it. I mean, do
you know who's about to do it?
No.
We're all friends with MRE Paris Jeffries.
Really?
Oh, really?
He's coming up in a couple of days.
Head of Embrace Boston.
I'm very excited
Well,
for him.
let me tell you, Marjorie said she'd do it. Not in this lifetime, nor the next lifetime would I agree, but I'm really sorry I missed you. Everybody's raving about this play, by the way. Again, it's only there a few more days. Check it out. We're talking to Jared Bowen.
So I absolutely love this story about Edouard Manet's, the Gardner exhibit that talks about his life, the models in his paintings, why his if he was his son, or we don't know if it was his son or his father's son, I guess, is off in the corner. Tell us about this whole look at the dynamics of the Manet family.
Yeah, this is really, really interesting, but also really, really lovely because they don't venture into the salacious. And as I start talking about it, you might think that this is what it is, but it's not. And so this is called Manet, a Model Family, just opened. It's on view through January 20th. And we're talking a lot about Manet and other Impressionist painters, even though he wanted to distance himself from the Impressionist painters because this is the 150th anniversary of the birth of Impressionism. But Manet was somebody who cared deeply about art. He grew up in a very wealthy family, and his mother was a very strong matriarch in the family. And at one point, they brought in a woman named Suzanne. She was a Dutch piano teacher who taught the kids lessons. And ultimately, she had a son. And there is a question to this day about who was the father. Was it Manet's father? Was it Manet himself? It could have been even a third figure. It was never discussed. Again, this is a very affluent family in Paris. They didn't talk about things. This would be a dark mark on the family. But what we see happen is how often Manet would paint Suzanne and how often he would paint Leon, the son.
Is Suzanne in Olympia, the naked woman reclining? Is that Suzanne?
She was, I can't say for sure, but she was often the model. He painted her something like 22 times.
Oh, okay.
And he never shied away from painting Leon as the son, who he claimed to be his son throughout his lifetime.
Yeah.
And so we see in this small show, but again, I think very impactful show about how he painted members of his family. So there was his parents, there was Suzanne, there was Leon, who may or may not have been the son. He often put them in historical paintings that had inspired him, but it was how he constructed it. For instance, there's one sort of interesting dive you can do with Suzanne and the Elders, where he portrays Suzanne as Suzanne in the Elders, who is somebody who's accused of adultery by lecherous men. So this might play into this whole who is the father, how did the family dynamics come together. But it tells the whole arc of this because after Manet died, he predeceased his mother, who disinherited the family because she would not recognize that Leon was actually his son. But again, it didn't stop Manet from making this his family throughout his entire life. We talked recently about Bert Morso, who Sebastian Smee features in his new book. He paints her a number of times. What was their relationship?
How about Andrew Wyeth and the Helga thing? Didn't we discuss that with you recently too? Who's in so many of his paint? Is that a variation on a theme?
I guess it could be because you paint what's familiar, you paint what you love, you paint what you find beauty in, and so there is a deliberate intention to have these subjects.
Yeah, a lot of these painters paint their wives. I mean, Edward Hopper is all full of his
she was
wife,
always in
every
there. Single model.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of them. It's convenient, saves you a little money.
It does.
They're always around the house.
Put them in different scenarios.
Yeah.
And I will say that, by the way, when you see the show, they have a lot of major loans, including from the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. Some things that never travel, at least one that's never been seen in the United States before, maybe even never seen outside of Europe, you'll see in this show.
Again, The Gardener, January 20th, right?
Yep.
Okay, Americans in Paris. Is that, the Addison, we always talk about, that's free, right?
It is free.
And
Always
Andover.
free.
So let's start with that. This is there through January 5th, free, Americans in Paris.
I really like this show because it tells a different story. So this is artists, we often talk about the artists throughout history who have worked in Paris and created in Paris, most notably the Picasso Circle and everybody who was there in the 1920s and Hemingway and these great circles. But then, of course, the war happened. The art world shifted. The art world really was centered in New York, and it was abstract expressionism in New York after that. But as the Addison shows us in this new show, Americans in Paris, artists working in post-war France, which is on view through January 5th, that there was a whole group of artists who had great liberties in going to France after the war and working there. One, it was the GI Bill. So they got money to just be able to work as artists and not necessarily have to have another job. Because it was Paris after the war, it was very affordable to live there. Many of these artists took their cues from James Baldwin, who had also traveled there and thought it was very important to get outside of the United States and see America from afar, especially if you're somebody like James Baldwin or many of the artists of color who had served their country only to return to the United States and find out that segregation was alive and they were subjected to massive discrimination and racism.
How are they able to be free? I don't know if you've ever had this discussion. How is it endowments? How do some museums survive with no admission and others can't.
Well, they're affiliated
Or
with
don't.
the school, Phillips Academy. And so I think that's where a lot of this has come. But they've always made it their mission. And the other thing that could happen, which I also really, really love, is that because, again, we're talking about Paris after the war, resources are few, so they had to get really inventive. They couldn't necessarily get all the traditional art supplies that one might have, and so you had to be inventive and innovative and experimental with your art. So this show gathers up a lot of artists who we may know today, like Joan Mitchell and Saul Witt and others, but moves them forward and moves them in with other artists we've never been exposed to, and hopefully this is an incentive, not Saul Witt, Ellsworth Kelly is who I was thinking of, puts them in a moment of discovery.
I never heard any of them, but it sounds terrific. I've never heard of this film either, even though it's one of my favorite words occasionally, forgiveness, exhibiting I said occasionally.
Ooh.
I said occasionally. Why'd you laugh? I didn't say all the time.
Okay.
Certain things you forgive, certain things you don't.
Okay, go ahead.
We
I'm
can get
sorry
into that
I
some of them.
interrupted.
No, I'm not at all. Here's a clip from the trailer for Exhibiting Forgiveness. As I say, it's one of my favorite words. It starts with Terrell reading nursery rhymes to his son, then confronting his father, Leroy, who has returned after 15 years' absence.
Mean old Mother Goose. Lions on the loose. They don't frighten me at all. Dragons breathe flame on my counterpane. That doesn't frighten me at all. I go boo, make them shoot. I make fun the way they run. Life doesn't frighten me at all.
Mama Joyce! Oh my God! Hello.
I ain't seen you for 15 years, but now you want to be somebody's granddaddy? You somebody's daddy
I
now?
don't want him to hear this. Listen, I need you to speak to him. I need you to talk to him. No, he has changed.
He ain't changed.
Can I tell you something? A lot of the clips we play are atrocious. And this is unbelievably loaded. That is incredible. Incredible. What's it about?
I was really, really moved by this. This is the first film by the artist Titus Kaphar. He wrote and directed it. Titus Kaphar is somebody who has really risen up in the art world over the last decade or so. In a lot of his paintings, he's been drawn to classical paintings and classical works. But as a black artist, what he often does is appropriates these images that are in existence throughout hundreds of years of classical art, and he'll whitewash the figures, sometimes cut them out of the paintings. He again, appropriates the images, but then makes it his own to help us understand the history of discrimination and erasure in the world. We also talked about him on this show because he was at the Gardner Museum a number of years ago with the Jerome Project, which is where he found his father had been incarcerated. He found every single man with his father's first and last name, and then created a devotional painting of their image, but then covered some of that image in tar, which is something he used to collect with his father.
I remember that, yes.
Exactly. And the tar at first was commensurate, how much of the face was covered by tar was commensurate with time served. And then he stopped doing that because he recognized that incarceration stays with somebody for their entire life. So this is the background to Titus Kaphar, who's now made this movie about an artist who has to confront his father quite suddenly as he's trying to move his mother closer to him. His parents are not married, they're not together. And so his mother is imploring him to forgive his father, who filled his childhood with lots of abuse, with a total lack of empathy. And so as this artist is trying to confront that, but also being a father to a young son and figuring out how he is going to be to his own son, we see this explored in this film. And then something I don't think I've ever really seen rendered in this way, we see what being an artist has meant to him and how art is an outlet and how he paints to have an expression of anxiety or fear or rage for everything that's happened to him. So exhibiting forgiveness is this whole reconciliation. Can you forgive generational trauma? Can you forgive what your father has knowingly done to you and that you desperately don't want to repeat upon your own son?
The answer is no in my case. Now, let me, you asked, so I'm answering the question. I made a comment a minute ago that I apparently did not ring terribly well with Jamie. I said a lot of the clips we play are atrocious. Now, let me repeat. They are atrocious. I didn't mean your selection of clips is atrocious. I meant when we do a film with Jared, often a taken out of context clip means nothing. It doesn't move you. It doesn't have a feel to it. That's what I meant. It wasn't about you guys necessarily. Yeah. In any case, no, it wasn't about you guys at all. This clip was loaded. It was just both talking to his kid and talking about his father. It was just brilliant. How long is this film? I know it shouldn't care, but I do.
It's about 2 hours.
Oh, that's
yeah,
okay.
And it's just in theaters, so people have a lot of opportunity to see it.
Exhibiting
I forgive you
forgiveness.
for trashing my clips.
No. Well, would you not agree?
I totally agree.
Some of them don't convey anything
Well,
because they're just pulled out of whatever.
It always reminds me of the Nixon-Kennedy debate conversation that you can see the film and it's wonderful, but then you hear it and you think, oh, I would never see that, even though I have seen it. I'm about to say really good things about it. Because
Exactly.
Nixon-Kennedy, if you saw the debate.
That's what we were trying to say, Jamie. Is
That's
what
right.
exactly what Jared just said, whatever it was.
Oh, baby, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like it like that.
What was I doing at that? What was that?
I don't know.
That was from years. What was it? A horny ghost. I don't know why we were talking about a horny ghost, but we were. I think that was a hell of a performance by me, I should say. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're not on the stage right now.
It's shocking.
Before we go, the New York Times has a provocative headline. Can a synthetic voice be taught to sing opera? So tell us, can it?
Well, I don't know because I haven't heard it, but here's where we're headed. So I saw the headline, and probably like you, I thought we were talking about artificial intelligence and how this is now taking over performance. We're not going to see live opera singers anymore. But no, this is something different. So at Rensselaer University, where they have a performing arts center, an experimental performing arts center, they are trying something new right now because they have an opera and they've cast a performer named Mark Steidel. They have cerebral palsy, and their character in this opera is somebody who is disabled and doesn't have the ability to sing and who is non-binary. And so they have developed a technology so that they can create a voice for this character. What I didn't realize is that for people who use machines to create a voice for them, if they're unable to speak, there are only about 6 voices that they have access to, and this is very, very expensive. So now, through the guise of art, you have a whole team that's trying to develop this and move it forward, but not just move it forward for a speaking voice, but to create an operatic voice that will be part of this play, or part of this opera.
And how is it connected to the person who is voiceless? I understand that they get a voice, but how is that voice, that's what I wasn't clear about, connected to that individual?
Well, my understanding through what I read is that this actor will work with them to identify this voice much the same way they might shape their own character. And so this is why you have a different shading to the voice and what the voice will sound like. And again, moving away from the fact that really you only have 6 options to choose from, which is so bizarre. We can do so much with artificial intelligence now, and that's really true that this has not moved forward at all. I love that it's taking art to do this, but so in this way, artificial intelligence can be used really, really well. There are human engineers working alongside, but it's all a giant collaboration.
Now, we could either spend the last minute asking you about your show, but we're going to do that. You call us about 1:55, and we'll talk about that, because I want to ask you another question. When Marjorie laughed a few minutes ago derisively, when I said, I love that word, forgiveness and exhibiting forgiveness. You know her fairly well.
I do.
What do you think she was trying to convey?
I think she had skepticism about your level of forgiveness.
Oh, she did. Okay.
That's my guess.
I just want to be clear. That was my guess, too.
So diplomatically
that's where I thought I was.
That's right.
Why are we both why am I turning red and you're turning red at the same time? Why is that happening?
Can I tell you something, by the way? I am heartbroken. I mean this sincerely, that the two of us did not go to see you in this thing. I had no idea it was as big a deal as it is, and I got to give you credit, because I'm telling you, my knees are shaking standing here listening to what you did.
And
It's
the script
incredible.
is different for every player, or is it the same?
No, it's the same.
But they don't know unless they have broken the rules and gone and heard the thing, right?
But there are parts of it that open up where you share things about yourself in this exchange. I will also tell you that I'm with Marjorie, because the reason I did it, I thought, well, if I don't know anything about this, I have nothing to fear.
That's
I can't fear what I don't know.
You can't be blamed for goofing it up.
But when I was in the newsroom that day, I had somebody turn to me and say, I fear everything I don't know. I thought that wasn't good
I
for me
fear
to
everything
hear.
other people don't know. That's what, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, my recurring dream is being unprepared. Does that surprise you?
No, it does not. You mean when you're awake, you're talking about?
When I'm awake, when I'm asleep, it's always
Jared, it's great to see you.
taking the exam, I'm performing, and I've forgotten the whole thing.
We'll talk to Jared right before.
Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. In the Congo, a vital mission is underway to help save gorillas from extinction. But to succeed, a wildlife...
Madrid is one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project. The anti-Trump Republicans' new book is on shifting demographics and the growing influence of Latino Americans on United States politics. He'll join us. And our text question of the day, how far can former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani fall? He was just ordered
since before his 2020 election loss. Trump now says he is mixed on early voting, but he says he is pleased to hear that large numbers of Republicans are voting ahead of the November 5th election. Trump promoted early voting at a rally yesterday in Greensboro, North Carolina. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben has more.
Trump spoke for more than an hour and a half, longer than he has spoken at many recent rallies as he accelerates campaigning ahead of Election Day. In his speech, Trump once again lied and said he won the election in 2020, as he has done many times, and falsely claimed that undocumented immigrants are, quote, conquering towns. He also insulted his opponents, calling former President Barack Obama a jerk and suggesting Kamala Harris is, quote, on drugs. Former Democratic Congresswoman and presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard also made a brief appearance, voicing her support for Trump and announcing that she is now a Republican.
With going forward. Harris is in Philadelphia today. Trump visits Georgia. A new United Nations report says it could take centuries to bring Gaza's economy back to pre-war levels. But NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports Gaza's economy was already precarious before this current war began.
The assessment of 350 years for recovery is based on Gaza's low previous growth rate and the destruction in the past year of war. Before this current war, Gaza's average yearly economic growth rate was just 0.4%, due in large part to an Israeli and Egyptian blockade after Hamas seized power in 2007 and multiple other wars. This war has left critical infrastructure in ruins and neighborhoods and roads obliterated. The report points out that if conditions are improved, with significant investment and no blockade or military operations, recovery could be faster. But even in the most optimistic scenario, it will still take until 2050. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
A new study in the journal Obesity finds that banning the construction of new fast food outlets in areas of high poverty may help reduce childhood obesity rates. Research examined what happened after a region of northeast England did just that. Researchers found that in neighborhoods with the lowest income, the ban was associated with a nearly 5% drop in childhood obesity rates compared with similar neighborhoods without a ban. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Ever since the tents were cleared at Mass and Cass in Boston, residents and business owners say that the open-air drug use, public sex, and violence has not only worsened, but it's spread to surrounding neighborhoods. The Herald reports that the revelations came at a city council hearing last night on a measure put forward by Councilor Ed Flynn that calls for a new plan to address the situation, which he says returned in full force this past summer. Up to 40,000 patients at Boston Children's Hospital and UMass Memorial Health in Worcester could lose access to their primary care doctors and specialists because of a breakdown between those hospitals and their insurer. Point 32 Health, the owner of Tufts Health Plan and Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, was not able to negotiate a new contract with Boston Children's and UMass Memorial and is now at an impasse with Tenet Healthcare. As a result, up to 40,000 patients may be forced to find new doctors, and not good news, especially since the state is still dealing with the fallout from the Steward Healthcare debacle. Don't look now, but less than 2 years after closing its final store, Bed Bath & Beyond will return as a brick-and-mortar retailer in 2025. Word from Beyond Incorporated, the parent company of Bed Bath & Beyond, says that a test of 5 new Bed Bath & Beyond stores are expected to open next year across the country, and eventually there'll be 15,000 of them. And don't look for supersized stores like the new ones will have a smaller format with a better fit for neighborhoods. 72 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Peace from Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to clear up any confusion. No tickets to the library or RSVP are needed or is needed. You can just stop on down. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there. So our text prompt of the day at 877-301-8970 is about the downfall of Rudy Giuliani. You know, he's the one-time personal attorney to former President Trump, even though Trump never paid his legal bills, by the way. He has 7 days, Giuliani does, to turn over his Manhattan apartment, a vintage Mercedes, a lot of other possessions, to satisfy the $150 million judgment, well, a little piece of the judgment those Georgia election workers who were defamed won. So we want to know if it brings you any hope that there will finally be at least some accountability for the efforts to overthrow the government of the United States a couple of years ago. 877-301-8970. We're joined now on Zoom by Michael Curry. Michael's the president and CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, a member of the National NAACP Board of Directors. He chairs the board's Advocacy and Policy Committee. And he's a recent Shattuck City Champion awardee, a great honor in this city. Congratulations on that, Michael, and welcome.
Thank you. An honor to be here, and thank you to the Shattuck Awards Committee and to the Boston Municipal Research Bureau and others. I was humbled and honored to be in that number.
Congratulations. Yep. So, Michael, we were reprimanded a little while ago by one of our callers for picking on black men, since 80% of them are for Harris, only 20% of them are for Trump. It's more than were for Harris has lost some black men, but the big problem, you could argue, was white men. But in any case, Harris is trying to shore up the vote, get more black men. She's doing great with black women, and she got this new plan to empower black men that she announced, and Barack Obama's been on the trail for her with Eminem. So what do you think about this whole concern that the Harris campaign has?
Well, I think it is a concern. You know, just about a week and a half ago, we hosted a fundraiser here for presidential candidate Kamala Harris and her vice presidential nominee here in Boston. Colette Phillips of Get Connected and I pulled together men of color for Harris. And that was intentional, Marjorie. We know that there's a narrative running that men of color are sort of evacuating the Harris campaign or not energized by the Harris campaign. So I think there's a little bit of an overstatement to this. I do think that black men generally and men of color generally are often distrusting and dissatisfied with both parties, that we don't feel like our issues are being addressed. We don't feel like our economic conditions are being treated with the sense of urgency that's necessary. The racism writ large that we experience, whether it's the criminal justice system, education, housing, is not a priority. And as a result of feeling that way, you're sort of easily drawn to sort of, false commitments and promises, and quite frankly, the negative messages that might be coming from Trump. So I think some people will be drawn to Trump, not because they've really evaluated and weighted their interests against, looking at both candidates, but are just drawn to his arrogance, his sort of braggadocious way of dealing with issues. And then, as some have stated, I think some of it is sexism. So no matter whether you are white, black, or brown, sexism still exists. So some men will still question whether a woman can lead and whether Putin and other world leaders will respect, and I think Obama spoke to this recently. I think it's a combination of reasons, but I think I'm more concerned that black and brown men will stay home and not vote than I am that they'll vote for Trump, although I think there's some concern that's legitimate.
Well, one of the things that I mentioned this to Jim this morning that I think is really hard for people, you hear so many promises and pledges at every election. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And Harris is trying, talking about having these forgivable business loans for black entrepreneurs, et cetera, more apprenticeships. And really, if she does win, but she has a divided Congress, she's going to be able to do very little of this because Republicans are on one side of these issues and Democrats on the other side. I kind of wish candidates would say that. They're raising everybody's expectations.
So should they promise nothing if they don't think they're going to control both houses of Congress?
I think they're going to make the point that if you want these things to happen,
you're
going to get out there and you're going to vote down ticket.
Okay.
You're going to vote for if you're a Democrat, you're going to vote for Democrats down ticket, or vice versa. So you won't get everybody all excited and then nothing happens.
And Marjorie, it's so funny because that's the conflicting message I'll probably deliver in saying this. So one is, I think as people of color and people generally, we're frustrated when people overpromise and underdeliver. I think that's true in politics, and I don't think whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian,
it's
whoever
across
you
the
are,
board,
you're frustrated with that. However, we create them, right? We create that monster that we complain about. And the reality is, if you don't tell me you're going to do it, then I may not vote for you.
Yeah.
So you got to come in. It's the persuasive part of it. They have to come in and say, I'll get it done. But those that are more politically astute, like the two of you, will say, wait a minute. Even if you win the presidency, you can't do that unless you get the legislature to vote for it. I mean, the Congress to vote for it. But I know that the masses of Americans want to hear that confidence that you'll get it done.
Yeah.
And then the reality is there have been wins that presidents have had from one party convening both sides and getting things through the House and the Senate. That's possible to do. You just have to have a really, it's the team of rivals. You have to have the ability to really pull people in and win friends and influence people. Does Kamala Harris have that? I hope so.
That's a very good answer.
It was a good answer.
Yeah, very good answer, Michael Curry.
By the way, I said almost the exact same thing, and she totally ignored it this morning, Michael. I want you to know. You say it, and all of a sudden, she's moved. Before I was going to say to you, but we've moved past it, I wanted to get your thoughts on Obama. There's been some criticism of his, what is described as finger wagging at young black men, but I realized we've asked that a bunch of times. I'll ask you a much more current question. Did you hear him rapping "Lose Yourself" yesterday after Eminem? Was that unbelievable?
That was pretty good.
You had rappers on the stage, but he's the one rapping. So.
It was just unbelievable. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I'd say this. I said the finger wagging. The reality is that's Uncle Obama coming in to talk to his family. And the reality is a lot of world got to peek in and listen into that conversation. But that's what we do when we pull brothers into a room. We say, you know what? You got to get your act together. You got to show up. You got to vote. And I think that's what he was doing. And unfortunately, it had to be done in a wide broadcast like that. But he was speaking to his people. He was speaking to his fellow brothers across the country. And we do that as families. Now, I could say men do that generally. Women do that generally. Irish folks do that generally. Sometimes you have a family conversation. Unfortunately, people can mischaracterize and misrepresent what that is. And some people will be in their feelings, Jim. Because, when grandpa comes in and gives everybody the riot act, some people are going to be in their feelings. But hopefully it bears out and they realize that they really do need to vote, one, and then two, vote their interests.
We're talking to Michael Curry. Michael, let's move to your healthcare hat as head of the League of Community Health Centers. A move was announced by the White House for people who have private health insurance, they'd be able to pick up over-the-counter, that's key, methods like condoms, morning after pill, and birth control pills under this new proposed rule. Under the current law, those things have to be prescribed, and if implemented, I assume most normal people would say that's a great advance. But I guess my question to you is, why wasn't this proposed by the Biden-Harris administration the day after the Dobbs decision? Why now? I mean, I know why now. Why it took so long?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to assume, though I think most people assume that it's sort of election related, but I think that if I could make an explanation for it, though I don't think there's an excuse, the distinction between the two. The explanation might be that there's a backlog of sort of priorities when a person takes over in the administration and you're sort of queuing them up. Of course, there's immigration issues, there's housing, education. And what happens is when you're at the tail end of your administration, you're trying to clean the closet and address some of those issues that you've not been able to get to yet. Now, it just happens to be right before an election. But I try not to overthink these things. For anyone who's ever held a leadership position, and I can just use my narrow, small world example of being a CEO of an organization, there's so much to get to, and there's so many things that require deep thought and lawyers to engage and policymakers. And quite frankly, this is a lot late, but I'm glad it's happening.
So am I. I'm glad it's happening too. We're talking to Michael Curry.
Michael, this sounds like a neat thing, this Chelsea-based nonprofit, La Colaborativa, involving Mass General Brigham doctors. Tell us what's going to happen.
So one is, we saw during COVID something that I think, quite frankly, we had never seen before. We saw public-private partnerships in a way we had never seen. We saw big hospitals and community health centers and community-based organizations and faith-based organizations coming together and collaborating to get education around COVID, to deal with vaccine hesitancy, to get vaccines in the arms, to deal with long COVID, all these things. And top among them in Massachusetts, and I think Gladys Vega, who's the president and chief executive officer of La Collaborativa, deserves tremendous credit. She stood out among the many because she organized her people and her organization around meeting the needs of her community, and she partnered with organizations, health centers, East Boston Health Center, Mass General Brigham and Mass General Hospital, the sort of network of Mass General Brigham, and she did something pretty phenomenal. They ended up doing things that positioned Chelsea to be one of the safest places under a pandemic than many other parts of the state of the country. And she did that by phone calling people to deal with their hesitancy, by getting them access to services. So now this partnership builds on what worked, because my complaint to both of you is that we figured out what worked, and then after COVID sort of died down, we went back into our corners and we want to do things in isolated ways. Credit to Elsie Tavares, good friend, phenomenal leader, health equity champion, who's now partnering with La Collaborativa through Mass General Brigham. And they're about to present a focus on going after treating illness and fostering a culture of health and well-being. And they'll put resources in the community to do exactly that. So I think it's just phenomenal work. We know what works. And I just want to name the initiative, Mass General Brigham, La Collaborativa, Community Care, Bridge to Health, Puente Ale Salud, and of course my Spanish, I never took Spanish, so I'm gonna mess that up.
We knew that, yeah.
But if you ask me to say it in German, I can. I did take 4 years of German.
What, you did?
Michael,
oh, I didn't know that.
Well, you're not going to ask him to speak German,
well, you can
I
just
hope.
say, hello, how are you?
Ich spreche wenig Deutsch.
Wow.
What was that? You speak a little German?
I speak a little German.
I wouldn't say so based on that. Hey, can we say, I had, on Greater Boston when I was doing it, I had Gladys Vega and Alex Morse, who's the town manager of Provincetown, on to talk about what they were doing during COVID. And I thought one of the really interesting things about Vega's work that I think you touched upon, and I assume, and this is a question too, but whether you do this with your community health centers, they didn't just wait for people to come to them. As you say, they reached out to them. They went door to door. And it seems to me, while that's obviously person intensive and resource intensive, the reality is, we've talked to you a lot, there's a lot of reluctance. Low-income people, people of color, don't have a habit going to a doctor, don't have the proper insurance or whatever. This whole outreach combination with a major healthcare provider like Mass General Brigham is a perfect model, it seems to me, particularly for low and moderate income communities, Michael.
It is. And if you want to go after cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, substance use disorder, maternal health, cancer, right? Prostate, breast cancer, the disparities we're seeing in maternal health where Black and brown mothers are dying and not surviving their pregnancy, or their babies are not surviving, in Chelsea for those conditions, then you have to do it door by door, person by person. You have to micro-target those people who are most at risk. And right now, there is this effort through this collaboration between the two to do that. This, I think, Jim, I want to give some credit to this overall broader strategy of the Health Equity Compact. We championed this about 3 years ago. We call place-based initiatives. We call it health empowerment zones. The whole notion that you can go after disease by zip code and neighborhood and bring down the rates, address the inequities. And what we're seeing is, whether it's the state's efforts through what they call AHEM, or whether it's the collaboration between MGB, Boston Medical Center, and the Mattapan Community Health Center, or it's this initiative that we're talking about right now, we're now seeing that dream become a reality, where now people are saying we can actually address health inequities and health conditions by actually calling Mr. John and saying, John, what do you need? We want to get you healthy cooking. We want to get you the access to healthy foods. We want to get you in for your prostate cancer screening. And Mr. John, do you have a job? And do you need, are you safe at home? And what other resources we can provide you that addresses the social determinants of your health? Super credit to Elsie and Gladys Vega. I'm the biggest fan of both of them.
Can I just say one last thing? You're horrible at promoting something that you were responsible for, the Health Equity Compact. People should check it out, healthequitycompact.org. We've spoken to Michael a lot about it. It's an organization that now has roughly, I don't know, what is it, like 80 leaders of color in the health community who are working to ensure that it's no longer a health inequity compact in our state and beyond. So healthequitycompact.org.
So, Michael, we've been talking for weeks now about Stewart Healthcare and the hospitals having to be shut down in Dorchester, Kearney, and the one up in Neshoba Valley, and people beside themselves over this. Now I read in the Globe that there's a dispute between a for-profit healthcare system and the state's second largest health insurer that means thousands of people in Framingham and Worcester could lose access to their physicians. I mean, kind of makes you feel like everything's falling apart here.
Yeah. So one is, I think, just want to give a shout out to Dr. Jakutu of the Boston Health Commission. She and I are co-chairing the Kearney Working Group, which I think we meet next week to start thinking about what the future looks like for the Dorchester community and the greater Boston community as it comes to losing access to Kearney Hospital and what the future could hold on that site. I'm excited that the members have accepted the invitation to work with us over the next 3 months, and the governor convened with the mayor this working group. That being said, I tell people, Jim and Marjorie, and I said this in my class recently, the Suffolk class that I teach on health policy, this is a real troubling time. That right now, if you open your paper, your newspaper, your Boston Business Journal, shout out to the folks at BBJ, you'll see that life sciences and the pharmaceutical space, they're laying off people. You'll see that the numbers of financial reporting out of hospitals are dire. Shout out to my friend Steve Walsh, the Mass Hospital Association. You'll see that there are closures that are anticipated across the health center. Health centers are strained in conversations right now, today, with our legislature about providing some supplemental funding to support us through the migrant crisis, the Stewart closures, and the overall pent-up demand for care in the communities most impacted by health inequities. I am deeply concerned. So what this is this is a symptom of a broader issue, which is now when everyone is strained, now when you sit down and have to negotiate a contract and your health plan, you say, hey, we're losing money, we're not doing well, and you want higher rates, it creates this sort of stalemate that can happen like the one you're seeing between Point 32 and the hospital systems. I hope and pray, and I'll say pray on this call, that they work it out, because we should not be destabilizing patients who are in cancer treatment. We should not be destabilizing patients who are getting care, pediatric care, senior services. And ultimately, we got to find a way to do it. Now, that may require not only the negotiators to solve that, but for the state to be part of that conversation and say, if you're both struggling, we need to figure out what might be possible around legislation, regulations, to assist you in that process. I know that's not a clear-cut answer, but the reality is this is business. This is the business part of the healthcare. And if they don't solve for this, real people pay a consequence.
Talking to Michael Curry. Do you have something on this?
Just
Yeah,
one
go
last
ahead.
quick thing. So Stewart was for-profit. This is another for-profit healthcare system. So is that the root of the problem, that they're both for-profits, or is that not?
Well, no, I don't think that's the case here. I mean, the conversation here is around Point 32, and we exist in a state with non-for-profit health plans that really are businesses, though they're not for-profits, they're not-for-profit businesses. And then hospital systems, our large hospital systems are not for profit. So aside from the greed and the self-serving nature of what Ralph De La Torre and the Stewart system did, we're now talking about the business of healthcare. And the business of healthcare is, if I'm a health plan, I need to keep my costs down so that I have to negotiate rates with you providers and keep that cost down so that I can pay my employees, so I can invest in all the things we invest in. And then hospitals say, hey, if you don't reimburse us well to the place that we can, we're going to run deficits and not be able to operate. Now, that's business stuff, right?
Yep.
That's all about risk pools and stuff that most people don't even know about when they're trying to figure out how to rate an employer and provide a rate for an employer. It's a complex part of this work that we do that most people will never understand. But the people who do understand it got to get into a room. They got to figure it out, because having 17,000 patients at UMass, or 9,400 patients and children is being destabilized is unacceptable. And that means that we got to figure it out.
You know, let me not miss the opportunity, since you mentioned him, to wish many indictments in the future of Ralph De La Torre, beyond just Malta, which is the only place he's been indicted so far. I was going to say we're going to end on an up note, but sadly, this 101-year-old legendary human has passed away. But tell us a little bit about her. What a great story. Tell us about Tony Vaz there, Michael Curry.
Yeah, so one of the things I love about how we are unpacking history, and, you know, the three of us get to do that sometimes, is that this woman was phenomenal. She, at a time in the early part of the last century, this woman decided she wanted to be in the filmmaking industry, and she decided she wanted to be an actress or a stunt person, and she got into the industry at a time that, quite frankly, probably didn't treat anybody in the industry very well, but particularly didn't treat people of color very well, and particularly didn't treat darker skinned folks very well, and typecasted you and did not give you the protections that we would now have, even though we just saw the incident a few years ago with the gun issue that led to the person being killed on the scene. Imagine a time where there were no guardrails, no regulations to protect, and then imagine being Black within that context. So she was phenomenal, and one of the things she did was she inspired the NAACP, to create an entity that annually recognized the film industry, and particularly those organizations that were doing positive things in media. They were casting Black actors, like I forget the show, SWAT. I don't know why it skipped my mind.
Whatever
it is. She was honoring those shows early, and then it evolved into honoring individuals who were actors and actresses. And now, as both of you, and I would love to invite the two of you to come one year, so we're gonna have to talk dates.
Yes.
The annual Image Awards comes up in February. I go every year. I usually bring about 10 or 15 people with me from Boston, and they come and they get to, you're sitting next to Morgan Freeman or Usher. And maybe you're not as close to them, but you're within seats from them. And then people get to really celebrate our singers, our actors, our filmmakers, our poets, our folks that are in and around this industry who, quite frankly, get forgotten. And credit to her for creating that concept, and credit to the NAACP for recognizing her just a few years ago, better late than never, and acknowledging the significant legacy that she had in creating this recognition. We mourn her loss, but we celebrate her legacy.
Yeah, I love the fact that, she worked with some of the famous Black actresses, Eartha Kitt, Cicely Tyson, and it talks about how she would do things like be hired to crash a Jeep. But the white stunt woman got $350 for crashing the Jeep, and Vaz got $40 for crashing the Jeep.
Well, wait a second. In that same story, how about her first stunt thing, where they didn't tell her it was a stunt?
Yeah,
they told her to lean on a railing, and the railing collapsed, and she fell.
She's trying to
onto a
glimpse of
mattress.
Sammy Davis Jr. and Sidney Poitier. They didn't tell her, and she went right down over the railing. But anyway, it's something. Like you say, unpacking history. Never thought about this for 2 seconds. It's the role of Black stunt woman. But
I'm just going to ask people, please, if you do find value in honoring the unsung and recognizing diversity in Hollywood, and the tremendous amount of talent that it takes to bring to that industry, please watch the Image Awards coming up in February. Tune in, watch it.
I thought we're going to be there.
Yeah, well, two of you need to come with me.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Well, we had to talk a lot about them at the time because I didn't know about these.
I'm going.
I guess I did know about them, actually.
I'm going.
Okay, you're going.
And it's February 22nd.
I'm free.
We'll be in Pasadena, and it'll be on television. So
We'll be waving. Michael Curry, it's great to see you. And again, congratulations on the Shattuck Award.
Yeah.
Well deserved, and then some.
Thank
see you
you.
soon.
Thank you very much,
Always
Michael.
a pleasure.
Always a pleasure for us.
Speaking with Michael Curry, President and CEO of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers and member of the National NAACP Board of Directors, where he chairs the board's Advocacy and Policy Committee. Okay, up next. Latinos are America's largest minority, and our next guest argues both political parties have gotten the voting bloc all wrong. Mike Madrid, an anti-Trump Republican and co-founder of the Lincoln Project, which is not really a bunch of Republicans that don't like Trump either. He's also a political consultant. He's got a new book out, and he joins us to discuss it. Listen to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH News investigates a small town,
When you take a small, pristine harbor like we have,
a big industry,
and you have as many as 3 ships running, those cruise ships.
I would be happy if none ever came here again, but you can't just say no more cruise ships here.
There's a debate going on amongst the townspeople. Cruise ships bring in dollars for businesses, but they also come with pollution. I'm Chris Burrell. Our investigative series, Poisoned Ports, is available at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Dover Rug and Home. Rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug, rugs and the people who know them. And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. For years, many believe Democrats took the Latino vote for granted. Trump's MAGA movement over the past few election cycles has changed that. Now Trump and Harris are both trying to court Latino voters, and Trump's doing a little bit better than he has in his last 2 runs. Put this up against the context of the report we discussed at the top show in The Atlantic. After meeting with the family of Vanessa Guillen, who was killed, a member of the military, promised to pay for her funeral. And then when he found out what the bill was, his quote, according to The Atlantic, was it doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican. We're joined now at the BPL by GOP political consultant Mike Madrid. He co-founded the Lincoln Project, though he's no longer affiliated. He's the author of the new book, The Latino Century, How America's Largest Minority is Transforming Democracy. Mike, it's great to meet you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Great day in Boston. It's beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful day, too. We've been really lucky this week. So before we get to the Latino vote and what it's going to mean for this election and what you discovered, what do you think about what Trump said about this, how much it costs to bury a effing Mexican?
I mean, I think it's horrific, but it's not new. This is not new information from this man.
Yeah.
And it's an indictment on all of us as a country that this is somebody who is on the precipice of, again, being the president of the United States.
But what I've read in the last few days is that a lot of Latino voters think when he does say those kinds of things, he's not talking about
That's exactly
about
right.
me.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Well, I mean, look, in many ways, I try to equate this and try to, candidly, like I'm very direct, we're all friends here. I try to explain this to people when they're referring to non-white people, similarly here, like in Boston, by talking about the potato famine in Ireland. It's so far removed from the average everyday experience, we're not talking about that anymore. And that's how a large number and a growing number of Latinos feel about this. And anybody who's offended by this should be offended by this as a human being, not necessarily by your ethnicity or your race. And that's what I'm trying to open Americans' eyes to.
Before your incredible analysis, that almost everything I read, I'm embarrassed that I made some of the mistakes that you're blowing away in your book. I'll try to do better, Mike, even when you're not here.
I will too.
Before we talk about your analysis of Latinos as the fastest growing minority, we mentioned, by the way, I don't even know if you know this, in Boston, Latinos represent 99% of the population growth over, I think it is the last 20 years in Boston. It's stunning. Yeah. Your story is almost as interesting as your analysis.
Well,
Could you take a minute or two and tell us about the little 9-year-old boy and how he evolved over the years?
Yeah, it's fascinating that you say 9 years old because just last night we lost Fernando Valenzuela, who was a Mexican icon, especially for a 9-year-old Mexican kid in Los Angeles, a huge baseball fan, when he comes onto the stage, and that's really when my story begins, in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area, where being Latino was not unique. This is old former Mexican land, But the story of assimilation from my grandparents who came here from the same region of Mexico that Fernando Valenzuela came from, my parents' movement out to the suburbs, and then my experience as a third-generation Mexican-American holding desperately onto that ethnic anchor, that identity of who we are, but also recognizing that that's a lot of that mythology is in the past, and the future is often more important than the past that we hold on to.
Well, but you weren't a Republican. You were a big deal Republican, a prominent Republican in high places. Yeah. What caused you to change your worldview?
Well, I've always had a struggle with the party, mainly on issues of race and identity. I believed in the economic policies of the Republican Party as a way to uplift my community. I was looking for something different. I believed very firmly, growing up in a family of working class Catholic Democrats, that the policies that we were pursuing as good Democrats were going to lead to really serious, significant economic and social problems for our community. I think that's bared out in California. So this different path that I was searching for was economic, but I was always keenly aware that there was this incredible tension between the Republicans that were emanating. This new emanation that was coming out of the Republican Party was very nativist to its core. It had a real problem with a multi-ethnic, multiracial America. And the struggle between my belief systems and my biology and who I was always a part of my story.
But wasn't there a major there was a major moment. I know there was
the
an
big
evolution.
moment was Donald Trump comes down the escalator.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that was the breaking point, but it had been building for some time.
That's Mike Madrid. His book is The Latino Century, How America's Largest Minority is Transforming Democracy.
So, Mike, I'm embarrassed to say I did not know until I was reading in preparation for your coming today that 70% of Latinos in Uvalde supported Greg Abbott for governor, and people remember Uvalde's where that was horrible school shooting, a lot of Latino kids in that town.
Yeah.
And Abbott was, at least initially, apologizing for the actions of the police, which most people think was terrible.
Yeah.
But so I guess I was surprised, but maybe I was wrong to be surprised.
Well, I think that's kind of the overall narrative of what people say about Latino voters generally, is there's such a strong stereotype of who we are that really needs to be dispelled. And I think people are just kind of in shock saying, how can people be voting this way? How can people be voting this way? And I think with more than a cursory understanding, it does, I think, at least for me, makes perfect sense. I'm very, very anti-Trump. I was from the beginning. I was a co-founder of the Lincoln Project. As a Republican, I stood up and said, this is horrible for our country. But that doesn't mean I don't understand the people in the neighborhoods and the communities that I grew up in that were saying, this isn't working for us either. This Democratic Party is not working for us on both conservative and socially conservative and economic issues.
You know, I'm sorry, Marjorie, go ahead.
Why the anti-Trump sense the moment he came down the escalator? What was wrong with him in your view?
I think the horribly destructive, toxic tone that he was taking with a changing country is a sign of a man who lacks the capacity to lead a pluralistic society. His need to divide us and pit us against each other as human beings and as Americans.
But then the Democrats were missing the economic.
Yeah, and they dramatically underestimate how strong economic conditions are. And how bad it is for working class people. And it's simply dismissed as, well, the S&P 500 is doing great, your IRA is doing better, wage growth, job growth. And it's like, they're almost dismissive of the fact that, you know, the price of gas has gone up or price of eggs is expensive. And I grew up hand to mouth. I grew up not quite paycheck to paycheck. Those are very real issues to me. They're very personal. And so when I see it continuing, I get it. I get the response.
You know, one of the things, Mike Madrid, that we say, and I think most responsible people in the media are finally acknowledging the Latino community in America is not monolithic. You point out, you know, in one corner, maybe if country of origin is the issue, you have Venezuela and Cuba, and then you have everybody else.
Yeah.
But you have a much more sophisticated analysis than our naive analysis. Namely, the generational issues are really in play, which I found to be fascinating. And then when I read them, I'm nodding and say, of course, flesh it out a little bit, if you would.
So we do have this tendency in American politics to talk about voter groups and voter blocks, right? And every group is not monolithic. There is no monolithic voter group, none, right?
Black women and the Democratic Party are still fairly close.
Well, but fairly is not quite, right?
Not quite, okay.
Monolithic is monolithic and fairly is not. Okay. You know, so, but my point is there are people, we are individuals. That's the beauty of who we are as human beings. But the one single largest political demarcation point with Latinos is generational. It's not country of origin. If you're an immigrant, you have very specific views. Overwhelmingly, the children of immigrants have a different political view, and the grandchildren have a tectonically different view. And the rapid growth of the Latino vote, the explosion of Latino voters, is with third and now a fourth generation of voters.
And the further one goes into generations, the more conservative they're likely to become,
That's
right?
a great question. No.
No?
The more populist they become, the more anti-establishment they become. There's very little evidence that Latinos are becoming more conservative. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that they're moving away from both parties, which is naturally going to hurt the Democratic Party because they've overwhelmingly been Democrats in the first and second generation. And when you have a populist candidate, an anti-establishment candidate like Donald Trump versus an establishment candidate like Joe Biden or a Kamala Harris, you start to see why this reaction is happening the way that it is.
I'll tell you a story that we have told in the air only about 1,000 times, following up on that note. When Margie and I, we spend a week in New Hampshire before every presidential primary. We went out in 2016 to talk to undecided voters on the street. Mm-hmm. And if they were an undecided voter, we said, who are you deciding between? Almost everyone said between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, because of the populist thing you're talking about.
It's fascinating you say that, because it's not just that Donald Trump has been overperforming with Latino voters, although he has, defying conventional wisdom. Bernie Sanders is the other U.S. politician that dramatically overperformed with Latino voters. He won the California primary in 2020 largely because of overwhelming support with younger Latinos. So there is an emerging populist strain that is very, very strong in this community.
But, you know, in the economy, one of the things that does surprise me is that when you talk about improvements, I mean, Joe Biden hasn't done everything, but he's done more, brought back some manufacturing, talking about, Kamala Harris is talking about no one's taxes will be raised unless they're making over $400,000. They seem to be moving more populist than Trump.
They're trying to catch up.
Yeah.
That's what's happening, is they're chasing their tail here.
Yeah.
You have to remember, under the Biden administration, and again, understand where I'm coming from. There's very few people more anti-Trump than I am in the country, certainly in the Republican Party. Interest rates tripled under Joe Biden. The value of our currency devalued by 20% under Joe Biden. So for working class people, quantifiably, you can say that for at least the first 3 years of the administration, things were much better, not a little bit better, a lot better under Donald Trump. So we can point to statistics and Wall Street averages all day long, but when you're talking to people who are hand to mouth, that are trying to make rent and feed their kids, it's a very different reality.
You know, Obama says that's because Donald Trump inherited his economy.
What was that? Of course he does. Of course he does. Of course he does. He's a politician, and that's what he's going to say.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be terribly dismissive, but I mean to be slightly dismissive, is that type of, people want to fix problems. They don't want to fix the blame.
But what is it about what Trump is saying now on the economy? I hear this all the time.
When he has a record as opposed to 2016.
That I had more money in my pocket back. I get that. Inflation was lower, gas was lower, eggs were lower, all those things. But he doesn't seem to be saying anything going forward. That
no taxes on tips.
Yeah.
That's huge, especially when you're talking about Nevada. That's an enormous part of the economy. Protectionist policies. We are the largest growing segment of the blue-collar manufacturing employment base. We are the largest growing segment of the workers in the energy patch in the Rio Grande Valley, southern New Mexico, southern Arizona, central California. 1 in 5 Hispanic men are employed in the residential construction industry or a related field. So when you have a tripling of interest rates, when you have a devaluation of the currency because of inflation by 20%, that is a gut punch to the Latino economy, a massive blow to us. And so that's why you see the New York Times just last week put out a poll saying 20% of Latinos, 20% believe that the economy is in good or excellent condition. I mean, those are very, very shocking numbers. For a Democrat heading into re-election, that she's even doing as well as she's doing.
By the way, the most recent numbers, which I should have said at the beginning, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the number of Latinos who voted for Biden was roughly 63% as of the moment. I think it's 56 to 37 for Kamala Harris. So unfortunately, if all you say is true, and we'll accept it as a gospel for the moment, with 13 days to go, there's not much you can do except promise. So with 13 days to go, what should a Kamala Harris be doing that she and Walz are not doing?
Well, she's made the adjustments that she's needed to make.
Like what?
Well, first of all, on border security. I mean, you're seeing a Democratic candidate running on border security unlike any presidential nominee in the history of this country. She's running, I point this out, she's running to the right of where George W. Bush was, a man I worked for, on immigration. I mean, the Lankford bill, a conservative Republican
From
bill,
Oklahoma, the
is
bill
is not just her policy, it is literally in the platform of the Democratic National Committee now. Like, this is a sea change. And it's happening because Latino voters have shifted dramatically on this issue. Latino voters are supportive of increased border security. 9% of Latino Harris supporters support mass deportations.
Okay, so if she's doing,
what she has to do is she has to continue to hammer home and try to break through in what was essentially a 100-day campaign against 15 years of really bad branding by the Democrats in the opposite direction.
So she's doing this tough, embracing what Lankford drafted, what Biden embraced, what Trump helped kill, and that's what I want to ask you, is not only is she embracing this tough policy that should have appealed to a significant swath of Latino voters, she's also trying to get the message out, as I said a second ago, that the reason this isn't law already is because Donald Trump was concerned that it be an election issue rather than the law of the land. Why is that combination not having more of a positive effect?
First, for 3 years, they did nothing. They made it worse. So why didn't she do this 3 years earlier is the conservative retorts to this, which there's no answer to that. Mm-hmm. So she has closed the gap on trust on border security issues, which is good. She's never going to be viewed more strongly on border security than Donald Trump, but she doesn't need to be. So she has done that. She's also moved on a brilliant housing policy. I think it's just probably masterful the way that that's been done. She's also
the down payments or the building female? Okay,
yeah. On both the employment side, as I mentioned, 1 in 5 Hispanic men work in construction. But at 30 years of age is our average age. Those are the first-time home buyers. That's who she's talking to.
Another mistake I think a lot of us have made is think that a lot of the opposition and a lot of the, close the border stuff was about racism. Now you're reading where something like 70% of Latinos in Texas are in favor of, they're worried about illegal immigration. You read that 40% of black men and women are okay with deporting people that came here. So I was kind of surprised by that because I bought into the racism thing too. Of course. So we were wrong about that.
Completely wrong.
Yeah,
and again,
so what is it?
A lot of this is about white progressives' views of how non-white people should be behaving. That's what it comes down to. I don't mean to be offensive or direct, but I think we need a splash of cold water 2 weeks before an election where the future of democracy is on the line. But again, and the great irony, and it's a beautiful irony, is a black woman is actually leading the Democratic Party away from this type of thinking. That's the beauty of the moment.
But so what is it? Is it that people are worried about their jobs? They're worried about housing's going to be too expensive. They're worried about too many kids from Mexico in their schools. What is the concern?
Well, I think there's a lot of different reasons. The first, as I mentioned, is a generational difference. Is people think that like how can you vote for somebody who wants to deport you and put your kids in cages?
Yeah.
And people are like, my people came here 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Like, what are you talking about, right? Like, I don't see that connection. The second is, for those that are recently migrated, and there's always been about a third of the recent migrant who has been very strong and strict on border security, there is this overwhelming sense that people are hopping in line. They're not coming the right way. That's part of it. The other part is competition for jobs. There's some truth to that too. And I'm not going to also suggest that there isn't this belief that those that come here from undocumented are devaluing the Latino brand. You're making us all look bad, right? And I'm not saying that I agree with that. I'm saying that is a horrible part of us as human beings that is not exclusive to Latinos, but it can't be dismissed.
In addition to reading Mike's book, The Latino Century, I was just thinking as you were speaking, it's a wonderful report, I don't know if you heard it this morning, on NPR about Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is very near where I grew up in Philly, which is now 54% Latino, has a Latino mayor, and it tracks a lot of the same themes that you express in your book. Before you go, it's not just the message, it's how you deliver it. What are sombrero politics, Mike Madrid?
Yeah, this is the sort of...
That's a great phrase.
Thank you. Yeah, I use that term confirm when I see politicians doing stuff which is a gesture to say, I understand you, but it's done in such a crass, elementary way that it's really saying, I have no idea who you are. And it's kind of, there are these cringy moments, like when Joe Biden plays Despacito on his phone, and holds it up at a press conference in Miami. Or there's, literally wearing sombreros and going to a Mexican restaurant in Tucson to launch your Hispanic outreach campaigns.
But your guy W got it, you say. W,
yeah,
your
completely.
Why did he get it?
I think it was because he was a Texan.
Yeah.
And it's natural. It's very seamless for us in the Southwest. I didn't even realize I was Mexican or Mexican descent until I came to the East Coast for school. And then I was like the first Mexican kid a lot of people met in the early 90s. And so and racial understanding here is all about black and white. The first chapter of my book is Beyond Black and White. Is we have a 250-year history as a country that sees race as very linear, and it's why these mistakes and these stereotypes are made, because we literally lack the vernacular to talk about a nuanced discussion of race and what it means outside of this bipolar construct.
We love this conversation. I hope you'll rejoin us after the election.
Thank you so
We'd
much
love
for
to
having
talk to you again. Mike Madrid, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Great.
We have been speaking with political consultant Mike Madrid, who co-founded the Lincoln Project, though he's no longer affiliated with them, but he is affiliated with and the author of this terrific book on what we've been talking about, the Latino Century, how America's largest minority is transforming democracy. Mike, thank you again.
Thank you so much
for coming in. Up next, our tech segment of the day on Rudy Giuliani's court-ordered reallocation of wealth to the 2 election workers he defamed in 2020. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Swoon. She is one of the first women to be recognized in the world of street art. Her creations are dreamlike, large-scale, and they live on the sides of buildings, in museums, and as 3D installations. And soon, Swoon's art will be here by way of the Boston Public Art Triennial. Swoon and the Triennial's curator and artistic director, Pedro Alonso, join us. That and more on The Culture Show at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Newberry of Brookline, a Kisco signature community. Retirement living opening this fall with independent, assisted, and memory care residences. Sponsors of the Alzheimer's Walk on October 27th. Life@thenewberry.com. And the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism. You can discover the secrets of the South Shore this fall and explore unexpected history, arts, and culture. More information at cplymouth.com/secrets.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In the height of Trump world's attempt to overturn the 2020 election, 2 former Georgia election workers were targeted by Rudy Giuliani and the president, by the way. Giuliani accused the mother and daughter of election fraud, saying they passed around USB drives with stolen votes like, quote, vials of heroin or cocaine. You'll remember them both testifying before the January 6th committee in front of Congress. First voice you'll hear is Shay Moss, and then her mother, Ruby Freeman.
I no longer give out my business card. I don't transfer calls. I don't want anyone knowing my name. I don't want to go anywhere with my mom because she might yell my name out over the grocery aisle or something. I don't go to the grocery store at all. I haven't been anywhere at all.
Do you know how it feels to have the president of the United States to target you? The president of the United States is supposed to represent every American, not to target one.
So, in reality, they were exchanging mints, not a USB drive with stolen votes, while counting the ballots. 4 years and $150 million defamation judgment in their favor later. It now includes a Trump-nominated judge ordering Rudy Giuliani to get rid of his apartment in New York City, his Mercedes-Benz, dozens of luxury watches, etc., in an attempt to satisfy at least a few $1 million out of the 150. So the question we asked the listeners, Marjorie, was, is there finally some accountability coming for at least some of those who had a hand in attempting to overthrow the election of 2020? Is there?
Well, we have some texts.
Please.
From an anonymous texter. Nah, nothing will change until Devil Pillow Guy, or as Marjorie knows him, Mr. Pillow, goes down. I think he's having some problems, Mr. Pillow, is he not?
He has financial problems. I don't know if he has criminal problems.
Virginia in Somerville says, if Rudy needs a place to stay after selling his Manhattan penthouse, I hear there are vacancies at the Four Seasons in Philadelphia. And this, of course, is a reference to he thought he was going to the snazzy, gorgeous, 5-star Four Seasons Hotel in Philadelphia to hold a press conference about, the election, corruption, and stuff. Instead, he winds up in front of some landscaping garage.
Next to a porn outlet. Do you remember that?
Next to a porn outlet, yeah. That didn't go so well. Another texter says, sweet as honey, the idea that Giuliani has to give them his home because he's forced them out of theirs for a malicious lie.
Great line.
It's just too gratifying. We should say, I think he's getting to keep his condo in Palm Beach.
Well, there's a dispute about that.
It's up in the air.
He said it's his primary residence. Under Florida law, you can keep your primary residence. It's not clear he will prevail. You know what's another interesting part of this? In this Judge Lyman, L-I-M-A-N, who again was a Trump nominee, which is also a hopeful sign. Trump never paid Rudy Giuliani, his most loyal lapdog, $2 million in legal fees. He stiffed Rudy Giuliani. So part of the judgment here by Judge Lyman is the mother and daughter, as part of the $150 million, have the right to sue Trump. For the $2 million
I love it.
in unpaid legal fees. I'm not naive enough to say this doesn't get Trump, and obviously if he's elected, a lot of the cases disappear. If he's not elected, he's not only going to be in a lot of courtrooms, may end up in jail. But, good for this judge in this case, because Giuliani refused to cooperate. She basically, is it a woman? I think it is. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
They essentially declared a judgment against him that he had defamed them, and as a result, $150 million or some part of it has to be paid.
Here's Sarah in Foxborough. From America's mayor to America's deranged uncle, God bless America. And here's Peter in Westford, who really doesn't like Rudy Giuliani very much. He says, Rudy Giuliani has all the charisma of a wine-drunk raccoon in the trash can that is Trump's GOP.
By the way, an anonymous texter said Rudy can stay on J.D. Vance's sofa. If you don't understand that, you have to Google it, and then you'll understand it. So that's the deal. We'll bring you more updates on, again, America's former mayor, as they called him after 9/11.
Okay, coming up after the 1 o'clock news, Christopher Muether, travel writer for the Boston Globe. He's going to tell us where possibly the best spa in America is, and it might just be one in Connecticut. And this new hotel on top of the Massachusetts Turnpike that's 14 stories high. How have I missed it driving under the Mass Pike, Jim? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com.
Charity working to avert climate change and biodiversity loss by partnering with NGOs and Indigenous peoples globally. More at internationalconservationfund.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked number 1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head of Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. He's been called Boston's Carmen Sandiego, an international man of mystery. Boston Globe travel writer Chris Muether has been out traversing the world, including a visit to a spa in Connecticut and a new hotel over the Mass Pike.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then a woman in Australia's Hunter Valley made the news for getting stuck upside down between two boulders for 7 hours after trying to recover her dropped phone. We'll open the phone and text lines to ask, how far would you go to recover the phone you can't live without? Would you risk death, dismemberment, complete and total humiliation, and my science issue, Jim. How quick are you to lose track of things? Your phone, your glasses, your date book, your GBH ID card. That's all I had on hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio.
Philadelphia, where she will make a pitch to undecided voters. Former President Bill Clinton will be campaigning for Harris today in Arizona. Clinton will be speaking at 2 events in Phoenix. And on Friday, the vice president will travel to Texas, where she's expected to highlight that state's abortion ban. Here's NPR's Tamara Keith.
Kamala Harris isn't trying to win the red state of Texas, but she is trying to make a point by drawing attention to the state's restrictive abortion ban and the effect it has had on women. According to senior advisor Brian Fallon, defending reproductive freedom and blaming former President Trump for ushering in an end to the protections of Roe v. Wade is a core part of Harris's closing argument.
We intend to make this a key tentpole of our closing argument. And so the appearance in Texas will serve to provide a staging ground for making that argument with renewed emphasis in the closing days.
Trump has declared that women, quote, won't be thinking about abortion if he's elected. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
Striking machinists at Boeing vote today on a new contract offer. NPR's Joel Rose reports the strike has halted production of Boeing's top-selling planes for more than 5 weeks.
The machinists' union overwhelmingly rejected Boeing's first contract offer in September. Now there's a better one on the table for the more than 30,000 union members. The company is offering a 35% wage hike, up from 25% in its initial offer, though still short of the 40% raise the union wanted. The company would also increase its contributions to employees' 401ks. But Boeing has not agreed to one key union demand, restoring the pension plan workers lost a decade ago. Joel Rose, NPR News.
Major League Baseball plans to pay tribute to the Los Angeles Dodgers' legendary pitcher Fernando Valenzuela, whose team is preparing to open the World Series at home against the New York Yankees. The Dodgers announced that Valenzuela died last night at the age of 63. No cause of death was given. Friday night's matchup will take place 43 years after the iconic pitcher who, as a rookie, inspired Fernando Mania, led the Dodgers to a World Series title when they defeated the Yankees in 6 games. U.S. stocks are trading lower this hour. The Dow's now down more than 400 points, or nearly 1%, at 42,523. It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu and 4 business-backed groups have struck a compromise on how much to raise commercial property tax bills over the next 3 years in order to limit an increase in cost to homeowners. The Boston Business Journal reports that Wu agreed to the number floated last week by the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce and the 3 other organizations for this fiscal year. It allows the city to tax commercial property owners at a rate that's 181.5% higher than residential owners. That's up from the current limit of 175%. The 2 sides had been negotiating over the past few days over a half percentage point, which is the equivalent of about $20 for the average single-family homeowner in Boston. The following 2 fiscal years, the shift would be 180% and 178% respectively, before going back to normal in fiscal year 2028. New filings within the state show the ballot campaign to end the MCAS graduation requirement received additional contributions of more than $2 million. Spending on the measure, Question 2, has far exceeded the other 4 ballot initiatives going before voters in the November 5th election. We have more from Jill Kaufman.
The donations in favor of Question 2 come uniquely from the state's largest teachers' union. The Massachusetts Teachers Association has spent almost $10 million to support the committee High Standards, Not High Stakes. In just 2 weeks this month, the campaign spent more than $1.6 million on advertising and direct mail. The campaign opposed to Question 2 has raised much less, around $2 million. Donations are mostly from Massachusetts investors and business groups. That includes this month $250,000 from billionaire Jim Davis, founder of Boston-based New Balance sneakers. If Massachusetts voters approve the question, students will no longer have to pass state exams to get their high school diplomas. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Jill Kaufman.
This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for individuals in a variety of career fields who want to help build a culture of inclusiveness. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
Eastern Rowdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here on Friday, and once again, no tickets or RSVPs are needed. Hello again, Jim.
Well, I want to thank everybody who was kind enough to come today, because I don't want people to think I'm ungrateful. It is not exactly a huge crowd today.
I'm devastated.
And an anonymous texter says, I have purchased all the tickets I can, so nobody can attend the show in person. And another anonymous texter said, good morning, GBH. Myself, my wife, and another sustainer are not at the library because we're headed to Orange, Massachusetts for the day.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. In any case, thank you all for coming, and thank you all who are here for coming. We're joined now at the BPL by Christopher Muther, as we called him before, sort of the Carmen Sandiego of the Boston Globe. He is their a travel writer, too. He joins us monthly. Hi, Christopher Muther. How are you?
Hi, James.
I'm
well.
see you.
I forgot my backpack. Or my hat. No, that's Dora.
Are you sick or something? What's with you?
I'm practicing for my Marge Simpson talk-alike contest.
You do sound a little bit like Marge.
Oh, me.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know if I'm breaking any copyright laws by doing Marge Simpson on radio.
Oh, my God. It's too late.
So, Christopher, we discussed this with our listeners yesterday, that this airport in New Zealand that apparently is worried about traffic or something has limited goodbye hugs to 3 minutes at the airport. And we discussed this, and, a lot of us thought 3 seconds was really sufficient and 3 minutes was a little long. But what do you make? You wrote about this. Well, you didn't write about this. The Washington Post wrote about this.
I'm sure you thought about it, though.
But what do you think about this?
Well, I'd say 3 minutes. Get a room.
Exactly. Exactly.
Jeez.
3 minutes.
What do you need that long for? When my husband drops me off at the airport, he doesn't even stop the car. He just opens the door and shoves me out.
Says, see you, Marge.
Exactly. Get out of here, Marge. I heard enough of you.
This is not the beginning of a trend, you would say, at airports around the world?
The ironic thing is, this airport in New Zealand is tiny, and it's silly. You think about when you get dropped off at Logan.
Yeah.
The police are there.
Dog
hovering.
eat dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It really is sort of move it along. And I can't see anywhere in the U.S. a large airport enforcing something like a 3-minute limit on hugs. How do you enforce it in New Zealand, really? So I don't see it as a trend that's going to take off, but
so to speak.
Exactly. But I also feel like again, 3 minutes. You can do a lot in 3 minutes.
You can.
Trust me.
And you would know exactly.
My nickname in college was Devil Pillow Man. Going back to what you were saying earlier.
Okay, fine. Now, let me just say, we try to be really even-handed on this show, and we really do. So let me just say this in the most even-handed way. Ron DeSantis is one of the most despicable human beings who has ever walked the planet. Today's example of despicable behavior, they used to have a page, I think on the travel site or whatever it is, Visit Florida, to attract LGBTQ plus tourists, because a lot of LGBTQ plus people go to Key West and go to lots of other places.
Yeah.
What did our favorite governor, DeSantis, as he likes to be called, what did he do to that page?
Well, he, the thing is, he hasn't officially said it was his doing, but it is sort of an echo of what's happened in his administration, which is on the webpage where there was the reach out to the LGBTQ plus community, which I'll throw out here, spends $200 billion
in travel.
In travel, that's internationally, but still, it's for the most part, ready to spend demographic. What Florida did was take off their outreach to the LGBTQ community. They got rid of, in most places that have sort of a destination website, most states, countries that have them, have something that reaches out to specific groups like Black, Latino, gay. So in this case, they got rid of all the pages that said, come, you're welcome, we're inclusive, that sort of thing. They got rid of them.
And you wrote that a bunch of states, you didn't include us, which I was surprised by, because I assume we're doing that. You'll let me know in a minute. A bunch of states, Connecticut, Illinois, and a few others, are trying to fill the void created by someone in the DeSantis administration's decision-making to lure that same gay tourist dollar. Is there any indication that's working?
Well, it's a very recent turn of events. So, Illinois Colorado, and Connecticut have all deliberately, they've sort of stepped up and said, Florida doesn't want you, we do. There's sort of an understated, unspoken thing in Massachusetts that we want gay tourists. I think it's unspoken in most states, or even spoken, because on the web pages there'll be these sections. But in Connecticut, they've taken out ads targeted to people who are doing web searches on LGBTQ plus travel. And even people who are just sort of searching in general, because they want to have more LGBTQ plus people moving to Connecticut. The idea is you don't feel comfortable in Florida, you will feel comfortable in Connecticut. This is what we have to offer.
What do you hear from Florida in terms of the gay community down there? I mean, I've heard good things about places like Fort Lauderdale and certainly Key West and stuff, but I don't know. If I were gay, I would feel kind of creeped out down there.
I have some trans friends who have moved for health care related reasons.
Really?
I have a lot
out of Florida.
Out of Florida, yes, not two, definitely out of. I have a lot of LGBTQ friends in Florida. Some of them are kind of like a wait and see, even though I don't know how much worse it could get for them. Although I shouldn't say that, never say never. But it's tough because, I wrote about this last year, the idea of, let's say we're going to boycott Florida but you have a lot of LGBT businesses in Key West, in Fort Lauderdale, in Miami. So you're kind of hurting the people who need you the most by boycotting. It's like
it's like any boycott, though. I mean, obviously it hurts people you don't intend, but the hope is that in the long term, behavior changes, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I'd be afraid about some incident, where I had to call the cops. And what kind of attitudes am I going to get from the cops? It's like, if you're African American, obviously, lots of times people are concerned about calling the cops. And when you think the government is kind of against you,
right?
I mean, that's an unsettling.
I mean, it sort of goes on to the fact that there are groups, civil rights groups, that have issued travel warnings to people from particular states. People who are black, people who are gay, when there's a travel warning,
it's pretty
within
bad.
your own country. It doesn't foster confidence about where you want to spend your dollars and relax.
Okay, so Marge, you mentioned, you wrote in that piece that Connecticut is trying to lure them. Have you ever heard of a place called Litchfield Hills, a resort?
I have,
You
yes.
have. Now, you wrote about it. I read the little short blurb you did. And then subsequently, you wrote the following. Can I quote you? Is it okay if I quote you?
You may.
Thank you. I've never written an apology letter to a resort, hotel, or spa, but I feel compelled to offer a sincere I'm sorry to Winvian. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
Winvian Farm in Western Connecticut. I was wrong, Winvian. Can you forgive me? Now, in this forgiving piece, let me just quote you a few times. I reduced Winvian to an over-the-top, campy gimmick hotel. That's your first thing. The problem is Winvian is not campy. May I continue?
Yes.
But after I dismissed Winvian as a bizarre, pricey gimmick, that's also you. Can I keep reading for a second?
Sure.
Okay.
Knock
I was
yourself out.
completely unaware that the property even had a spa. Did you write that?
I did.
You did, okay. And finally, I also did not know it was part of a particular high-profile chain. So how do you feel about what you did here?
I feel good about what I said. I feel very professional.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the fact that
You didn't really criticize them, by the way. I read your original thing. It wasn't exuberant, but it was not that critical.
However, it was enough to make me go back and look and realize that sometimes I'm hasty to jump to a conclusion, as we all are. But as a upstanding writer, reporter, I was able to admit that I'd made a mistake. A serious mistake, like calling a spa campy.
Now, you go to the spa, and if you're lucky, you get a helicopter in your room. And I have to say, I said to Marjorie, I don't want to get in the same trouble. I don't find it that appealing.
Oh, I do.
To go in a hotel room with a real helicopter in your room?
Not the helicopter, but the picture you took of the room with the trees.
What's
that?
that
Was really cool.
Yeah,
and
tell
the
us about this
fireplace
joint.
with all the wood and this gorgeous bed with beautiful pillows. I thought pillows were going out of fashion.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why I called it campy was there's the rooms, I think there's like 18 cottages, and each one has a different theme to it.
I see.
So whenever I think theme and cottage, I'm like, oh boy, this is like an amusement park or something. But they're really well done. It's not like, so I had seen the helicopter room, and I'm like, good Lord. But the other rooms are really sort of tranquil and beautiful. The room that I stayed in had a waterfall.
Yeah.
It had
In the room?
Yes, it had a sunken tub that overlooked the trees.
Oh.
It was like really, really beautiful.
It looked gorgeous to me. And the food was great, you said?
Food was great.
And the spa
I mean,
services?
I was going to arrive late, and I called ahead because I knew I was going to be late. There was an accident on the Mass Pike, so the restaurant would have been closed by the time I got there. When I got to my room, they had laid out a bunch of food for me.
Oh,
and,
lovely.
I was like Joe Q. Citizen. They never know, like, it's a travel writer from the Globe. So, it wasn't like they went out of their way because it was me. It was because, and they thought it was maybe Marge Simpson. I don't know. But, they really, really, they do all the right things.
How much does one of these cottages cost a night? I assume a pretty penny.
Yeah, it's, during the summer, you'd expect to pay near $1,000 a night.
Wow.
Off season, maybe more like $750.
By the way, getting back to my complaint before about the crowd today, not those who came, an emailer from Marlborough said,
Oh, yes.
sorry I couldn't be there today. I had to choose between going to the library for BPR and getting a root canal. So they obviously decided that they wouldn't. I understand that decision. We're talking to Christopher Muther, the travel writer for your Boston Globe.
So, Christopher Muther, this is one of the weirdest things I've ever read about this Wizard of Oz theme park that was abandoned, and now it's kind of fighting its way back, sort of.
Yes. I mean, I am obsessed with this place. I've been wanting to write this story for so long.
Is this because you love the movie? What's the obsession?
The obsession is like how it was like this bizarre, creepy place that's managed to come back from obscurity. It was so. It's called Land of Oz. It's located in Beech Mountain, North Carolina, which is
going there.
2 miles from nowhere. 2 hours from nowhere, and it's at a ski resort. You take a ski lift up to this park, and it sort of looks like Oz in a kind of North Carolina meets a low-budget 1970s theme park Oz. And so I'd seen stories about it. Essentially, it was built in 1970, opening day. Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher were there to cut the tape.
Imagine that.
And Carrie Fisher was a little kid, you said, like 13 years old. Yeah.
And it took off immediately, and then it fell by the mid 70s, early 80s. It was like burnt, vandalized.
That's sad.
They had an original Judy Garland dress that was stolen. But since that time, it's like slowly come back because there are a lot of weirdos like myself who are like, this sounds really cool. And so I was really pleasantly surprised when I went there and saw that it's not a creepy, derelict place anymore, but it's really heartwarming what they've done.
What's heartwarming?
It's heartwarming that it sort of has a real let's put on a show mentality about it. There's someone there who works on Broadway who spends a few months a year really getting this park ready. It's only open for 3 weekends in September. And then the rest of the year, it's empty.
What the hell do they do the rest of the year?
They go to Broadway.
I'm serious.
I wasn't clear how they make money, because if it's only open 3 weekends, by the way, the Yellow Brick Road Gym, 3/4 of a mile long.
I saw that. That is appealing,
that's pretty
actually.
Long.
Yeah.
But, if they only have it open, how can they maintain it, landscape it, all those things in those 3 weekends? It seems
that's
hard to do.
That's the thing. It's not I think this is more of a labor of love than a money-intensive grab. It's basically owned by, it's part of a ski area.
Yeah.
And the ski area, they can't really do much with it because there are now all sorts of condos nearby.
Oh, okay.
So the housing association doesn't want a thing year-round.
Okay.
But they're willing to put up with 3 weekends a year of people buying tickets for particular blocks of time. But
and is it Wizard of Oz fans? Are those the people that are flocking to this place?
Wizard of Oz fans, people who grew up in the area going to this park, and then rabid homosexuals such as myself.
Are you a big
really want to be there?
Are you a big Judy Garland fan kind of thing?
I'm more of a Kylie Minogue ABBA person.
Who that? Oh, by the way, I
ABBA.
have a friend who shall remain unnamed. You know her. I meant to text you the other night. Who flew with her daughter to London for one reason. Why did she fly to London last week?
Oh, it was probably, was it Kylie or was it Taylor Swift?
Mamma Mia is why she is there. For those who don't know, you are a big, what are they called? Those phony,
ABBA?
no, but the phony ABBA people. What are they called?
Oh, the Avatars?
The Avatars,
Yeah.
yes. Are they still up there this
Yeah,
summer?
London Voyage. It's also now going to be coming to other places. I think,
Like ours? Like
I think
us?
Las Vegas is the place they're talking about bringing it because it's made millions of dollars.
And these are like, what are those things called? Not just Avatars. What are those things called? Like,
I mean, they are avatars, but it's with a live band on the side.
Yeah.
You honestly do feel like you're at an
Really?
ABBA show. I
Well,
mean,
that's too bad.
I love that I can plug this again.
No, it's
called
great.
ABBA Voyage,
Okay.
Olympic Village, London, East London.
No, it's really sounds,
Jim,
it sounds
Jim is
fun.
dying to go to this.
No, I
He's dying to go.
am dying to go.
And I'll
yeah.
just point out, it's more
Please.
fun than going to Orange. like I'd say going here is more fun than going to Orange.
Where is Orange?
Well, not for that
Orange is
listener.
right next to Athol,
Oh,
Massachusetts.
thank you.
It
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Thank you for
Wow,
that.
So I
that's
know
very
pretty well.
impressive.
You're up there from that neck of the woods,
I
right?
am.
Yeah.
I am from Athol.
You're
You
an
are? Oh, we went through this.
He's
That's
an
right.
Atholian. Is that what they
Exactly.
call you?
No, I think that's not what they call them. Actually, thank you very much.
Okay, so
good
once again,
opportunity
I'm embarrassed. You know that I must have driven underneath this thing at least a dozen times right now and never noticed it. This 14-story hotel over the Mass Pike by the Green Line. Where is this hotel? Is this at Newbury Street?
Yeah,
Mass Ave, right?
Mass Ave.
Yeah.
So
Mass
if you're
Ave.
driving in, when you would normally see like the TJ Maxx that used to
Yes,
be Tower
yes,
Records
yes.
and HMV. So it's in front of that. And it's where like the Car Gurus building is and the Lego headquarters. And then on the other side of that is Citizen M Hotel, which
14
is
stories.
14 stories. It has 399 rooms in it.
Jesus.
It's the large. So Citizen M is a Dutch hotel chain. This is the largest of the entire chain. Is in Boston now because they've done so well. They have another property over at North Station. So now they have like this sort of ace location at the tip of Newbury Street in Mass Ave.
And it's $200 a night. I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
but the rooms are 60
I know,
square feet,
but
Christopher Road.
I mean, a lot of hotels in Boston are like what, 500, 600,
if that,
700.
yeah.
So
It's
I mean, this
crazy.
is a deal, right? You got a
It's-
kid at college at Mass Art or Northeastern or whatever.
I mean, my thing about these micro hotels is that if you're coming to a city and let's say you're younger than Jim
Yes.
and you're able to like be spry and out in the town.
That's right.
You're not going to sit in your room all day
No.
catching up on your
Excellent
stories like
Yeah.
like Jim would. You want to
Yeah.
be like out exploring the city, and then you get home and you just want a place to like crash. And this place also has this really beautiful common area and a restaurant and a bar. It even has like a patio sort of overlooking the area.
What do you mean, like overlooking the turnpike?
Not over the turnpike.
Oh.
There's like a little park area that's part of the whole complex. My concern was if I stayed in this place, would I hear traffic from the pike?
And you didn't.
And I didn't. And I stayed in a room facing the pike so I could watch the traffic because, I'm that
Is that
kind of
sort
guy.
of fun? Watching the traffic,
Yes, I would like
think,
that.
has some appeal to me.
Yeah, it's mesmerizing.
Now, the only problem is I understand you're not going to stay in your room the whole time unless you're me.
Yes.
But when you are in the room, it's rather claustrophobic, it seems to me, even if you're not my size. I'm serious. 160 square feet is like a bathroom. It's like a big bathroom.
I mean, it's a really well laid out.
It is?
Yeah,
How so?
It's very smart. And so the whole back section of the room is the bed.
King
Bed.
size.
King
Bed.
size bed.
Thank you.
Right
Bed.
up against the window.
Yeah.
Underneath is storage.
Oh.
So, and then you walk in and there's sort of an enclosed capsule toilet shower. On the other side is sink. So it's enough for a normal sized person like myself or Marjorie to go and enjoy the space and not feel claustrophobic.
By the way, Judy and Danvers text, Christopher has such a fabulous way of trashing things. You do. You really do. Thank you, Judy. I couldn't agree more, by the way. So, Christopher Muther, my older kid was at a wedding I used to live in Provincetown before you were born. And the most beautiful, I had a store there, a couple of stores. The most beautiful time of year was, and I'm not that kind of person, but I loved it, was when the crowds left. So like October and November, so incredibly beautiful. Smaller crowds, beautiful weather, that kind of thing. She went to a wedding last weekend, right at the whatever you call the thing.
The Pilgrim Monument.
Thank you very
Pilgrim
much.
Monument.
A Pilgrim Monument kind of deal. And they're renaming it for Arnold Palmer. I don't know if you know. Did you hear that?
I did
no,
not
that's
hear
not
that.
true, actually. And she raved about it, which reminded me of, I stole that line from Borowitz, so my apologies, Andy.
It's okay.
Fall in lots of places that are summer resort kinds of things, like P-Town is, I assume are spectacular bargains and spectacular opportunities.
Oh, I mean, when I was driving here today, I was thinking, I should be writing a story about the best beaches for October.
Absolutely
because,
right, yes.
Welcome to our new global warning. I like that. The global warning reality.
I like that. It's very clever.
The only good thing about it is how warm it is now in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, we have these beautiful 80 and 70 degree days in October. And so in all seriousness, I totally agree with you that shoulder season, especially fall, is like the best time to go to these places.
Yeah. So, such a good idea. Why don't you write it? Why are you not writing about it? I'm serious. Why are you not writing about it?
I mean, I have written about it many times.
You have?
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's very
so
busy.
recommend a couple of places that you have recommended in the past that are good for, I love that expression, shoulder season. That's great. And I'm serious. I like that. What are a couple of places like that are drivable that you would suggest people go?
Drivable. I mean, I always think like Lenox is a great place.
That's a fabulous
and,
one.
If you're able to not go on a weekend, because you kind of want to stay away from leaf-peeping areas in shoulder season.
In New Hampshire, they say they're so overrun they can't take it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would recommend perhaps going south. So like Connecticut, like that part of Connecticut on Long Island Sound is really beautiful. Yeah. Also like Provincetown is perfect. And also there's a lot happening in Provincetown in the fall. Each weekend is still like a theme weekend. Yeah. So if you're not like Jim and you don't hate humanity and you want to be around other people.
I don't hate humanity.
Oh, please.
By the way, how about Orange, Massachusetts for a shoulder weekend?
Ethel.
I know that.
I mean, there is a castle there that's been an old mansion.
In Orange?
Yes, it's been renovated and now is a B&B.
Is that really true?
Yeah, it is true.
You stayed at that thing?
I have not stayed at it. The Wheeler Mansion in Orange.
Wow.
I love that I'm giving these random plugs to places today.
Jamie just wrote us a note. I don't know if he made it up or not. That Orange is south of North Orange. I didn't even know there was North Orange. Is there really? There is North Orange?
There is, because this is more than you ever want to know about this area.
No, it isn't actually. Go ahead.
My family were dairy farmers, and they're all from North Orange.
Oh.
Is that true?
That is true.
That's fascinating. Now, Greg texted and said, a fellow Oranger, this is Greg, who moved to Athol. You can relate to that in many ways. Yeah. Orange is Jumptown, USA. Do you know why it's called Jumptown, USA?
Because people jump out when they can?
No.
I do know. There's an airport.
No, that's not the answer. Nice try. It is the first skydiving in America was there. Did you know that?
I didn't know it was the first. I did know there's skydiving.
That's what Greg says anyway. He's an Oranger.
Greg doesn't know what he's talking
about.
about.
Okay, fine.
I didn't know there was Orangers.
Is that it?
Wasn't sure where it was.
Marge or whatever. Where are you going? Are you allowed to tell us, whenever you're here, I'm never sure, I should ask you off the air, are you allowed to say like what's coming up in Christopher Mutherland?
I can definitely tell you, because
Please do.
There's a story that will be running in the Globe this Sunday online this week about the airport in Singapore, where I spent a couple of days.
Oh my
because
God.
it's the best airport in the world. It's also why I sound like Marge Simpson, because I was on a 19-hour flight.
19-hour
flight. Briefly, I don't want to give anything away, but why is it? Give us a touch.
Happy to give it away. It has a 7-story indoor waterfall, which is the tallest one in the world. It has a climbing wall, a butterfly garden.
Oh my gosh.
It has a cooking school where I took cooking classes. It also, the airport itself offers free trips into the downtown of Singapore, so you can kind of see the sights. And they're free. So it's pretty much the best airport on earth. And I used it as a destination. That's how much I love it.
That's great. That's really great. Sunday in the Boylston Globe.
Yes.
They pay you extra for the photographs or no?
They pay me extra?
Yeah. Do they for the photographs?
No, they barely pay me. They pay me to get out of the office, so they don't have to listen to Marge Simpson.
It's great to see you and hear you. Christopher Muther, thank you very much for your time.
Christopher, thank you very much for being such a good sport with
You recognize this music?
I do. It's my
hometown. Let's hear a little bit.
Okay. We have been speaking with Christopher Muther, travel writer for the Boston Globe and impersonator of Marge Simpson. That's why you're hearing the music.
He is Marge Simpson.
Okay, up next, a case of a woman who dropped her phone in a crevasse and spent 7 hours hanging upside down, lodged between rocks, trying to get her cell phone back. Okay, haven't we all been her, although maybe not as extreme at one point in our lives? We're going to open the lines and ask you about the lengths you've gone to keep your cell phone close in hand and what you've done when you've lost it. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
This summer, Kamala Harris was met with a wave of enthusiasm from young people after taking over the Democratic ticket. But now, 2 weeks out from Election Day, has that initial buzz faded?
They see her, I think, as attached to a Biden administration that didn't handle inflation in particular.
Checking in with young voters on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Boston Children's Hospital, ranked the /1 pediatric hospital in the world by Newsweek. Boston Children's, where the world comes for answers. bostonchildrens.org/answers. And Longy School of Music, presenting baritone Brian Major performing Mortal Storm, a song cycle by Robert Owens with text by Langston Hughes. Thursday evening, October 24th at 7 in Pickman Hall. Tickets at longy.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie, and we're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Earlier this month, Marjorie mentioned this is an incredible story. An Australian woman dropped her phone between boulders in Australia's wine country. She reached down to retrieve it, but she slipped. She was stuck upside down, where she remained for 7 hours. And by the way, the photograph that we were given, all you can see is her feet from above the bottom of her feet.
Bare feet, her little
for
toes.
7 hours. So
can you imagine?
No. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. What lengths would you or have you gone to collect a wayward cell phone? Dumpster diving, toilet bowl fishing, which I'm embarrassed to say I've done, dredging around the bottom of that pond out back, wherever. And could you even last 7 hours without your pocket supercomputer, or you're like one of our producers who will not be named, that's Zoe? Can you even get yourself from home to the BPL every morning without using Google Maps? The number is 877-301-8970. Call or text. And Marjorie's side issue, if you happen to know the current location of her sunglasses, headphones, GBH ID, or her phone at this very moment, please give us a buzz. 877-301-8970. Let me clarify two things. Where have you attempted, maybe successfully, may not, to retrieve your cell phone from, and where would you not do it? When, for example, would you do it between these two boulders, which are really scary? And secondly, if you were without your phone, as all of us have been from time to time, dropped it, lost it, etc., how panicked were you in light of the fact, who is the justice? Was it Roberts who wrote something about, can you check that, Jamie? I think essentially wrote in an opinion about how everybody's whole life exists on their cell phone, which is totally true. And if you don't back everything up, even if you think you've lost it and haven't, you're in abject panic. The number is 877-301-8970. This is interesting, too. We talked about North Orange being north of Orange. Jan in Watertown says East Hampton in Massachusetts is west of Northampton.
It is?
And Jan says, you're welcome. How fascinating is that?
That is very bizarre.
Not
That is
really.
very bizarre.
Okay.
Listen to this
What's
one.
that?
This was from the Globe back in May.
What was it?
That our staff found for us. This guy dropped his girlfriend's iPhone in a sewer on Huntington Avenue, right across the street from the Museum of Fine Arts. And it was the day she graduated from law school, and he felt terrible. But you know what he did?
No, I do not.
He contacted the Boston Water and Sewer Commission.
That's very nice.
I would have just said, I've screwed up and it's a mess. He called them.
No, you would have called Jamie and told Jamie to get it, wouldn't you? I mean, that is...
No, I would not.
Okay.
I would not have done that.
Fine.
And he talked about how the finest people from the Boston Water and Sewer Commission came to the scene, and they spent hours dredging up the catch basin to find the phone.
Nice. Okay, good.
Can you believe it?
Did you ever drop your phone in the toilet?
No.
Never?
No. I've left it in here a couple of times.
The bathroom.
I've left it on the side.
Well, that's not
thing.
whatever.
It's not.
Would you retrieve it if you dropped it in the toilet, which I have done?
Yes.
Would you retrieve it?
Absolutely.
You would. Yes,
Absolutely.
so would I. And so did I.
Have to wash your hands afterwards and all that. They're much better. Remember years ago when you first got your cell phone, I was putting them in big bottles of rice. You know, you're supposed to put them in rice to get the water out of the phone.
Does that work, by the way?
Well, it didn't used to work, but maybe it works now. I don't know. I haven't tried it in a long time, but I have noticed that when I've done bad things to my phone, usually it survives. And I'm
How
very
long
grateful.
could you? I know you lose your phone every day.
I do.
How long could you exist without your phone and not be in a total panic?
I would be totally screwed. I would say I'd lose my phone an average of 4 or 5 times a day.
A day?
Yes, but I really get desperate. I have the find your phone thing on my iPad and my computer.
Well, that's actually grown up.
That's the only
really
thing I
good.
do with my iPad anymore, actually,
That's
is
amazing.
find my phone, and you
Okay,
turn
fine.
it on, it makes a beep, and you go find it. Then you have the find your earbuds things on your phone, which doesn't seem to work as well.
Okay, good. Now, here's what Chief Justice Roberts said. Jamie was kind enough to find it. He was ruling on cell phone privacy. Modern cell phones, he wrote, which are now such a pervasive and insistent part of daily life that the proverbial visitor from Mars might conclude they were an important feature of human anatomy. That's pretty good for Roberts saying a thing. Why are you making a face?
Because I'm reading a text from Beth in Framingham.
What'd she say?
She says, a few years ago, I dropped my phone in a well-used porta potty at Great Woods. My friend wanted to help me fish it out, but I drew the line at that. Most embarrassing part was having to post on Facebook, asking friends to send me their contact info because I had dropped my phone in the honey bucket.
I have to say, if I dropped my phone in a porta potty, I would probably wave goodbye. I mean, that was a very sad story. 877-301-8970. Where have you dropped it, and have you gone after it? And secondly, and maybe at least as importantly, how important is your cell phone to your existence? And could you do without it even for a short period of time? By the way, we're getting a lot of shout-outs on YouTube to Orange, Massachusetts. So we thank you all for, I don't know what I'm thanking
Great
them
town is the consensus, Jim. A great town.
Anonymous, I dropped my iPhone into the foot bath while getting a pedicure, took it out, dried it off, still working several months later. Well, who wouldn't take it out of a pedicure thing, kind of thing?
Yeah, you might do that. Ellen from North Attleboro says she dropped hers in a pond filled with slimy green algae this summer, but she jumped in to get it with all her clothes on. I would do that. I would do that too.
Can we take some calls?
The porta potty's tough.
That is
Melissa
tough.
from is it Marlboro?
Marlboro, yeah.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, guys. I have another porta potty.
Please.
My friend, a good friend of mine, was telling me the story that she was at an event, brand new phone, and dropped it in the porta potty, and she fished it out.
Well, the issue is, how did she fish it out? How did she fish it out? Do you happen to know? She didn't just stick her hand in there, did she?
No. Well, she said she used a stick to kind of lift it up.
That's fine.
And then, she grabbed it. I like to text her. I told her she'd win. She went forever.
Oh, Melissa, we're losing you. Thank you for sharing that story. We appreciate it.
Annette from Atkinson, New Hampshire says she lost her phone at a party at the Esplanade on the 4th of July. Her pocketbook with the cell phone and cars, and car keys fell in. But they got gloves from an EMT and retrieved my car keys only. That was all she could get
Gloves
out.
is the key, don't you think? Gloves?
You just have to bring the Playtex gloves with you everywhere you go.
Exactly, because you never know where a porta potty is going to approach you. You never know when a porta potty is going
to attack your cell phone. Let's go to Jim in
By
Boston.
the way, before we go there, Patrick in Canton texts, my uncle once left his cell phone on the roof of his car, and when he heard it slide and drop, he backed up to find that he had run over it. That's a pretty good one.
One time I left my cell phone on top of my friend's car.
That's shocking.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they
exactly.
drove about 3 miles back to their house with my cell phone on the roof of their car, and it was still there.
That
Isn't
is amazing.
Incredible. I thought you'd be impressed.
I
by
was
that, Jim.
impressed. Jim in Boston, I'm sorry to interrupt your call there. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I lost one in the porta john.
And?
We call it the Blue Lagoon, and it hit a land pad. Let me put it that way.
Oh, jeez. No. And what'd you do there, Jim?
Kind of stared at it for a little bit and said, you know what? That's it. I ain't grabbing that. So, you know what we did? We waited for the guy who cleans them. She showed up. We're trying to call it to see if he'll pick it up and answer it.
And? Did he?
No.
Okay.
They just put the sucker in there.
Let me tell you, if there was a poll, I think you're the majority. Even though a lot of these phones cost close to $1,000, I would say most people would give it up when it comes to the porta potty. Jim, thank you very much for the call.
Sanitation guys in Gerlich, Nevada told me the most recovered objects from the Burning Man's porta potty are cell phones.
Is that really true?
Well, that's what the texter says.
Here's an anonymous texter. Ever notice how when you lose your phone, you lose trust in everyone? Are you sitting on my phone? No. Get up. That is exactly what people do.
Yeah, one of the texters says it's really difficult eating lunch during this particular discussion, Jim. Yep. Okay.
Can I take a call?
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you. Laureen, you're on Waltham. You're on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
We're good. Thank you.
My cell phone story is not as dramatic as all of these.
It's okay.
Potty.
Yeah.
But the hardest place to drop your cell phone is in your pocketbook.
Well, you're talking to one of us who you always find your stuff in your bottom of your pocketbook, don't you?
Yeah, I have a bad habit of losing things. I lose everything. It's terrible.
Are you rather disorganized like Marjorie, Lorene, or what?
No, I'm very organized, and I have very little use for my cell phone, so it's not a big deal. But it's like my keys. I put my keys in there, I can't find them. Put the cell phone in there, I can't find them.
Well, that's a very upbeat story because at the end you did find it. Lorene, thank you for making the call. By the way, have you really stared at this photograph? This is horrifying. I'm sorry we're not posting
this.
The
one with the little feet?
This is a little crack, and I mean a really narrow crack between two boulders, and all you see are the bottom of the feet of this woman who was upside down for 7 hours.
So there was no cell phone service, speaking of cell phones, where she was, and her friends had to drive away to get help. And the rescuers said they had to remove several large boulders to create a safe access point and build a hardwood frame to ensure stability. Then they used some kind of winch, a turf wire winch, I never heard of that.
Yeah, I made those.
A traction and lifting device with a continuous wire rope to move a boulder weighing 500 kilograms, which is about 1,100 pounds. Took them 7 hours, but they finally got her out of there.
So I know this is not our topic, but a couple of times I've been upside down in my life, which I have from time to time, the blood flows to your head rather quickly.
That's right. I don't know
how do you do 7 hours upside down?
I don't know.
Simone Biles couldn't do 7 hours upside down.
I don't know. You feel the blood rushing to your head for 7. I don't know how. Well, the woman said she thought she was going to die. She said she didn't think she was going to make it out. She's cursing herself for not telling her family that she loved them, thinking of every situation in her life she could have handled better. She's crying, thinking of all the things.
It's in the New York Times. This is like a real story kind of thing.
It's from Australia.
I know where Australia is.
Okay, let's go to Mark in New Bedford. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Mark. What's your deal?
Hi. I heard a story, I don't know if it's true, about someone who got their phone wedged between two people hogging at a New Zealand airport. Took them almost an hour to get it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why they had to put a stop to that, Mark, and say 3 minutes and you're out, because who knows how many cell phones could be stuck between those two chests.
Your research is fabulous, Mark. We hadn't heard of that particular conundrum, but thank you
that
for
was brilliant, Mark.
Sharing that with us. We appreciate it, Mark.
Yep.
877-301-8970. One of our colleagues just said Australia is south of Orange, Massachusetts, which I think it is.
Listen to this. A friend's truck popped open. Laptop fell out on 95, Interstate 95. After realizing it happened, she risked her life, backed up on the highway. The laptop, unfortunately, was hit and run over.
Oh, that's really a sad story, too, isn't it?
Oh, somebody put their iPhone in the washing machine while doing laundry and went through the whole cycle. I took it out, and it worked fine.
Do you insure your phone? There's no way you know if you have insurance, right?
No, I do not have insurance.
But do you know that you don't have insurance?
I know I don't have insurance.
Because you're too cheap to do it, or what?
Because it's expensive, and I eventually do find it, so I don't have the insurance.
Where's your phone right now? Do you know where it is?
It's right next to me.
Oh, my
it's
God.
Right here.
Okay, fine.
Do you have insurance on your phone?
I do have insurance, yes.
Was it $7 a month or something?
It's limited. No, it's cheap because it's only porta-potty insurance. It's only if the phone... No, I do have insurance. It's not cheap, but I think it's worth it.
How much is it?
I don't know, $10 a month per phone, though. If you have a lot of phones in the family, it's a lot of money overall. Nancy in a car, we're talking about lost cell phones and also the value of the cell phone to the average cell phone user. Hi there, Nancy.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey.
First-time caller, long-time listener.
We love that both. Thank you.
And I'm so glad I got through because I actually have a story about Marjorie.
Oh.
You do?
I do.
Let's hear it.
So I used to work at the Kennedy Presidential Library.
Okay.
And both you and Marjorie were coming to host an event.
Okay.
Jim, you arrived first. You were in the lobby with me.
Yeah.
Marjorie came rushing in.
Oh, God.
And
I remember
behind
this.
her came the Uber driver because she had left her phone and taken the Uber driver's phone.
That's right. I took the Uber
Do you
driver's
remember
phone.
that, Marjorie?
Yes, it was a debate. And
Wait,
I was
and how
really
did it get
late.
resolved? I can't even remember.
It took me like 3 hours to get from Brookline to Dorchester because there was so much traffic. Oh, that was a nightmare, Nancy.
No,
I
but
do
how'd you get
remember.
your phone back, and how did the Uber driver get his or her phone back?
I have no idea.
What happened, Nancy? Do you know?
Well, the Uber driver realized it before he drove away that he didn't have his phone.
That's right.
So he came running in, hoping he could catch her, and she was still in the lobby.
I love that. I am so glad you called, Nancy. It's nice to hear from you again. That was a great story, which I totally forgot.
Yeah, do you remember that?
I don't totally remember. What were we doing there?
Who was a debate with? We
I
were
have
doing
no
some
idea.
debate.
We were?
Yeah, and I was like an hour late. It was horrible. Okay.
Okay, wait a
Matthew-
second. Here's another anonymous. I have a friend that got stuck upside down when using her teeter-tilt table and was stuck there upside down for 7 hours. She thankfully survived. What is a teeter-tilt table?
I have no idea.
Okay, fine. Well, she was stuck for
Please
7
text
hours.
back and tell us what a teeter-tilt table.
Or not. It's
Okay.
depending.
Okay.
Let's go to Matthew and Maynard. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I think we're good.
So my story is I was talking to my best friend, and I was boiling pasta, and I dropped my phone in the pasta, boiling water. But the amazing thing is, I reached in instinctively to pull it out.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Oh, and burned your hand?
And?
No, this is the miraculous part. I had no burn at all. Nothing.
Wow.
How about the phone?
The phone didn't make it.
Oh, that's a very sad story. Well, that's
But
pretty...
at least I didn't have a first-degree burn or anything.
We're happy for that. By the way, I've come close to dropping my phone in boiling water when I'm cooking, and I've just, when you drop it and then you touch it and you hit it and
Yeah.
it goes to the side. That was an up and down story there, Matthew. Thank you.
Did you see the picture of the teeter table?
I hope I don't get this wrong. One of the Tolman brothers, I believe, I think Warren, the state government, AFL-CIO, State Center, did this. This is this thing where you strap yourself to a thing and it flips upside down. It's for your back, to stretch out your back, and you hang upside down. I mean, that's really tough. 7 minutes,
Yeah,
7
I cannot
hours
imagine.
of that. 7 hours? Yeah, 7 hours.
Yeah, and that person isn't even at 90-degree angle. They're like a little bit, like a 75-degree angle.
Aren't you, also, if you're close, how can you, how do you survive?
Well, she was hysterical. She thought she was having a panic attack. She was not in good shape during
She was
this whole-
not?
No, she was not.
Okay.
Suzanne in Plymouth donated her phone by mistake in a bag of clothing when she gave the clothing away, and she never got it back.
Oh, that's sad, too.
Yeah.
A lot of sad stories
Very
here.
sad stories.
Yeah, okay. So let's go to Annie and Gardner. Welcome to the show. Hi, Annie.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
So after I had my first baby, I was in the middle of sleep deprivation, brain fog, and I lost my phone. I can't get it, and a couple months later, my husband found it in the back of the freezer with all the pumped milk that I had put back there.
Did you say, hey, Annie, you have a bad connection. Did you say a couple of months later?
Yeah, it had kind of slipped on stuff.
Oh, we're losing you. It's a horrible connection. I assume it didn't work. Can you answer that question?
It did not.
Did not. Well, by the way, thanks, Andy. You've definitely left it in the refrigerator, have you not? When you go in there to get something from the refrigerator, you put it in the refrigerator?
Yes, I've done that.
Okay, fine.
I've done that. You don't want to leave it in the oven. That
We
could
have
be a problem.
Is this a real
Listen to
thing, or
this
are you
one.
making fun? We have a real photo. If you're watching on YouTube or at the library here, we're going to put up the photo. There it is. If you look carefully between the two boulders, you can see the soles
The toes.
of this. What's her name, by the way? Her name is Matilda Campbell. Those are the toes, and what's the front part of your foot on the bottom called? The sole or something?
I don't know.
And the sole of her that is a terrifying photograph. Leave that up for a couple of seconds there if
Listen
you can.
to this.
Please.
Lee from Westboro says...
The ball of the foot. That's what it's called. Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. It's pathetic that I didn't know that.
This is Lee's recurring nightmare.
What is it?
My cell phone, I have an accident. I'm in my car. My cell phone falls in between the two seats right when I have the accident. I'm stuck in my safety belt. I can't reach the phone between the two seats. I can see it. It's right there, but I can't get to it to call 911. That is my recurring nightmare.
That's a
So we need
serious
a
thing.
dream interpreter to interpret what that means. What do you think that means?
I think it has something to do with Orange, Massachusetts. By the way, a texter just said they lost their phone in Orange, Massachusetts. A lot of goes on in Orange that we were unfamiliar with, by the way, but that is the deal. By the way, hasn't that happened to you? I don't know what the space is in your car between your seat and the console.
That's happened to me a lot.
It's exactly wide enough for your phone to fold down, right?
Yeah, that's happened to me
So
so
what do
many
you do
times.
then?
Well, you have to call your phone, first of all, because you don't know where it is. And you call and call and call, and then it rings, and then you have to try to get it out of there, which isn't easy because it's very narrow. They have they only accommodate people with very skinny fingers, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess mine aren't skinny enough.
Mm.
Okay.
You taking a call, or what are you doing there?
I saw my neighbor on his hands and knees, digging through the snow like a dog looking for his phone.
Oh.
The neighbor said he finally found it for the neighbor, but
That's
it was on
great.
his porch. Wasn't in the snow, Jim.
So here's another wonderful story, very heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
Dave from Grafton. I'm a vegetable farmer, Dave says. I once tilled my phone into a field in the spring. After finding it again at the end of the season, it worked just fine after a clean and a charge. That's an upbeat. Don't you think it's an upbeat story?
Yeah, that's very good.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Bruce in Rosendale. Hi,
Hello, Bruce. What's up?
Yeah, hi. This is a variation on the theme of leaving it on top of your car and driving away.
Please, yeah.
So I go probably a mile away, and I really needed to call. Obviously, the car told me that my phone wasn't there, and I realized I had left. Turned around. One of the.
Hey, Bruce, we're getting every other word, but I want to hear this story. We're going to put you on hold, take one call, and come right back in the hope that you're in a better cell area, so don't go away. Let's take one
Here's
more.
Paul, who says, I've never lost my phone, but I have lost other things, and of all the things I've lost, I miss my mind the most.
Oh, that's really something. Paul and Hingham, what's your deal?
Oh, tongs in the glove compartment. That's a solution for
Tongs
the texter.
and gloves?
Yes.
And you should have a wetsuit. You have a wetsuit, tongs, gloves. Right. No, those are them. That's make a lot of
and
sense.
A mask.
And a mask.
And an oxygen
that's
tank.
Right, exactly. And a scuba gear, just in case.
Scuba gear, that's right.
Okay, Paul.
But the tongs make sense, right? To get it from between the seats.
Well, it's only so much you can carry with you, Margie. I mean, come on. Paul and Hingham, what's your deal? Quickly. Yeah.
Well, I'm a cabinet builder, and I was loading cabinets in the back of my truck, and I'd taken the phone out, put it on the seat of the truck, and I went to go forward, and I heard a door fall over, so apparently I left the door leaning against the truck.
Oh.
So I jammed it in the park and jumped out of the truck, but it was in reverse. So it went off in reverse, the door hit me, knocked me down, my legs went under the truck, it drove over them, breaking them in 5 places.
What?
It rode, my phone's on the seat, it goes over my wife's garden, 100 feet up into the woods. So I'm lying here in my driveway with 2 broken legs and no phone.
Oh!
And,
how are you?
And nobody's there. Nobody's there.
And
so I'm going, help. I need a little help here. Help. And I did this for 15 minutes before a lady heard me 2 streets over and came driving down looking to see who was yelling help.
Oh, my God. And how are you? How are you?
I'm sore. It happened the first day of summer.
Wow.
That's looking around, but every day in every way.
We wish you a speedy recovery. Let's try Bruce in Rosendale for the last 45 seconds to see if the connection's any better. Hey, Bruce, try it again.
All right, I'm trying again.
It's good.
I drove about a mile away. I realized I didn't have the phone, turned around, started tracing back exactly where I had come from, kept trying to make calls until the phone popped up and would make a call. So finally, I realized it was like right outside my house, but in the street, standing up on its side.
Love that.
Straight up on its side, found it, there you go.
Beautiful end to the discussion. That's a lovely finish. Congratulations. And we hope the guy before is okay.
Yeah.
5 broken portions of his legs.
Horrible.
At the beginning, and he was laughing. He was had good humor and whatever.
The texters have advice to the recurring nightmare guy about being in the accident, can't get the phone. They said you should say, hey, Siri, call 911.
If it's on.
If it's on.
Hey, so if your phone were to fall into a porta potty, Jared, would you reach in and get it?
Absolutely not.
Okay, fine. I didn't say it. We don't have to talk anymore. And secondly, do you carry a pair of tongs in your car?
Yeah, I don't do that.
Don't do that
either.
Fine.
You know where I lost my phone once? I totally forgot about this until I was just listening to you.
Where's that?
I think it was me. On Space Mountain in Disney World.
Oh, no.
What do you mean you lost it there? What does that mean?
My phone, if I remember correctly, my phone slipped out of my shorts pocket and I lost it at Space Mountain and there was no getting it back.
Wow, that's a really
So
painful
how did you
story.
contact people? Did you have it backed up on the cloud? Or
Well, I was traveling with people. This was a long time ago. Remember the days of the Razor phone? That's
Oh,
of course
yes,
what I had.
yes.
So the Razor slipped right out of my pocket.
So have you ever been to Orange, Massachusetts? Yes or no?
I think so. I think I've been
Okay.
through it.
That's fine. Leave it at that.
Wait, why are we talking about
I
that?
don't
Because
know.
people
No,
have been
it
talking
doesn't
about
matter.
Orange.
Let's not talk about it.
You know, when we had razor phones, we still remember everybody's phone number.
Exactly.
Those were the days.
Okay, good.
Okay,
So,
what's on your show?
Yeah, what's on your show there?
We are talking to the artist known as Swoon. She is one of the major artists who's going to be part of the Boston Public Art Triennial. So we're going to be talking with Swoon and Pedro Alonso, the curator of that, which of course is coming in 2025. We'll talk to Kiefer Glenshaw, who played the cello for 24 hours straight, turning it into an endurance sport.
I read about this.
And then Mahesh Das, who's a regular contributor on the show, president of the Boston Architectural College, will talk about the daring designs of architect Walter Hood.
On that note, Jared, it's a pleasure to see you twice today.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you very
What a
much.
treat.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Jared Bowen,
Thank
2
you,
o'clock
Jared.
right here.
Okay, we are done.
We're
Thank
done.
you very much for listening to another edition
Thank
of
you.
Boston Public Radio. Thanks to people who came down to the library with or without tickets. Keep up with us we don't need tickets. I'm only kidding. Keep up with us 24/7 way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by NBC's Chuck Todd. We missed him. He's going to give his analysis of the election. Former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary Andrew Cabral, legendary drag stars Jinx Monsoon and Ben de la Creme, and Elizabeth Jackson and Richard Brunson from the non-profit Bridge Over Troubled Waters. They're going to talk about youth homelessness in Greater Boston, which is a very difficult and sad problem. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer is Jenny Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL team, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lau.
Andres Nelson's conducting the Boston Symphony Orchestra with Brahms' First Symphony.
Support for WCRB comes from you and musicians of the Old Post Road, now in its 36th season. The Period Instrument Chamber Group explores rediscovered Baroque and classical music that will ignite your curiosity and inspire your imagination. Their upcoming Risky Business concerts feature riveting works by German Baroque composers who pushed the musical envelope of their time. October 26th at First Parish in Sudbury, and October 27th at Old South Church in Boston, and streamed online. Tickets at Old Post